But it
And then
depends
people
on
turn 'em in.
cutting depth.
I'm
If the
hoping
drawer
that
gets
we
in the way, that's a
big
problem.
one
It's
next
like,
week.
you know,
This
you
is only
have
once a
certain
week.
issues with certain
So that way, I'm hoping
cabinets
that I
that
can get it turned in like in 2 to 3 weeks.
So if,
Yeah.
I mean, if I go down to my supply with a good set of measurements,
Yeah,
because I just
But you
didn't have
find
a
out
lot
from the
of
clerk's office.
faith and
But you
we
would get
always
away
did
with
roughly.
No, I would measure it definitely.
Until we finalize.
I'm going to I could tell. Take pictures and send it to you,
I think it's after the 12.
Yeah.
you know?
So,
Yeah, because we didn't know how, you know, that
check
time
up
she was
when I'm
using the
back.
dishwasher.
Yeah.
So we didn't know how much
That'd be the
space
way
we
to
were
do it.
gonna
Actually, yeah.
Just so you know
But we didn't
exactly.
have any.
But the
Yeah.
depth
Because you don't wanna
changes
know
because we have that
Get
fireplace
5,
that
6
comes
names
out.
and find out.
No, because we knew that was
I know, but we didn't know how
I
much
don't
space the
anticipate
dishwasher's
there's
gonna
gonna
take.
be more than
You
two.
know, if we're just gonna have dead space in the back of it, so just plan on the depth of where the fireplace
Second
comes
one's
up
gonna
to.
be-
Just a dead space, that's fine.
All right.
We know how we.
That's fine.
So,
Thank you.
but we'll figure it out.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just, I mean, you can do.
How are you?
I'm good. You'll be seeing you shortly.
I know, you ready to start painting?
Yeah.
I'm excited. Okay, it is 6:03 p.m. on Monday, February 3rd, 2025. It's finally February. I'm calling to order the select board meeting. We are meeting in the basement of the Rutland Public Library. We're a 3-member board tonight, Harry, myself, and Jen. I believe Paul and Tom have prior commitments. We are on Zoom for public participation as well as being recorded. I think we're streamed for local cable access and recorded for re-airing on local cable access as well as YouTube and other social media outlets. Can we please stand for the pledge?
Flag of the United States of America.
Republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have a full house tonight, so we'll go through the beginning part and then I'll probably try to take some stuff out of order so everybody doesn't have to stick around. We have minutes, treasury warrant, and payroll. I would entertain a motion to approve treasury warrant 25-16 and 25-PW16.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second,
Questions, comments, concerns? Roll call, Harry.
second I.
Ledger I.
Whitman, aye. We have minutes from a joint meeting with FinCom that was January 16th. And then we have our regular scheduled meeting from from Monday, January 21st. I believe all 3 of us were present at both meetings, so if you're comfortable to do both, or if you have questions.
Harry wasn't there for the finance committee.
Oh, that's right, sorry. So I think, Harry, you can approve them if you're comfortable with it, because they're minutes as documentation, or we can hold them until we have Paul at a meeting.
I read them thoroughly, I'm okay with them.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I would entertain a motion then to approve the minutes from the January 16th joint FinCom meeting.
So moved.
Check it out. Any comments? Roll call, Harry.
Second I.
Ledger I.
Whitman, aye. Thank you. And then we have the January 21st, 2025 meeting. That was the regular meeting. Everyone was present at.
I'll make a motion to approve January 21, 2025 meeting minutes as presented.
Is there a second?
Second,
Questions, comments, concerns? Roll call, Harry.
second I.
Ledger I.
Whitman, aye. Thank you. Thank you, Harry, for reading.
No problem.
We will move, if the board's comfortable, we'll take public comment now, and then we'll probably go into building use policy conversation and then fire districts. Is that okay with the chiefs and council on aging people? If the board's comfortable. Is there anyone here for public comment? Name and address, please.
His name, okay. Alicia Lorenzi, 23 Vista Circle. So I'd like to paint a little picture for you, so if you bear with me. So I'm treasurer of Glenwood PTO this year, and I had an idea for a fundraiser. Childcare after the half days is not available through Rutland Rec. The clubhouse and safe space is closed, so I thought, what a great what a great thing for PTO to try and like watch your kids for a fundraiser. So I got a no to host that at the Glenwood School. So I thought, okay, what if we do it at the Glenwood Senior Center, the community center? I got an okay to get a walking line from Glenwood School to the community center, so it was already on my way. So I went over and introduced myself to Nancy, and I pitched this idea, and she seemed open to it. She was like, yes. We discussed the importance of making sure that the students were structured at this time. It was not gonna be a free-for-all. You've met children, they can get kind of crazy if they're not occupied, so the plan was to keep them occupied. I made a whole schedule. We were gonna have stations with rotating activities. And then we even discussed having some seniors or senior center resources like facilitate the activities. And I'm thinking, this is great. This is community engagement. Yes, yes, yes. Let's go. Okay, so that was when we left. It was looking like a green light. And learning now that Nancy does a ton of things for these seniors. There's like full schedules in the mornings, looks like mostly, but there are a ton of resources. She does a ton of work for these seniors. So I wrote all of our ideas down, and Nancy and I met again, and then it seemed to be like we ran into some roadblocks. So there became concerns about insurance. PTO has insurance. I don't think that's a problem. There was concern that the space was already being used. She said that there's a scheduled meditation group at 11:35 that would need to be quiet for a little bit for them. Okay, I'm looking to get there at 12:30 with the kids from the walking line. We'll walk slow, not a problem. There's a creative writing group at 12:30. Okay, if they're in the room, that's fine. We don't need to hang out with them. They can creatively write over there. We can have our kids over here. Just need the space. Again, didn't seem like a problem. We were gonna work together. Then there was a concern of too many people. I was looking to have about 50 kids total. Safe Space that's the NAQUAG one. So they have about 50 kids in their after-school program normally. And then the Glenwood, Clubhouse. Clubhouse has about 35 students normally. So I was thinking 50 would be a sweet spot. I could not run this. I'm also running a tandem fundraiser at the Central Tree Middle School, where the middle school PTO and the middle schoolers are engaging with NAQUAG kids on that half day. They're gonna walk from NAQUAG to the Central Tree. So I'm really looking to do these two tandem fundraisers. So anyway, the 50 was too many. So she said, what about 20? To me, that seems like not a lot of kids. That's about one classroom worth of students. So, but you know what? We're moving forward. We're getting yeses. So I'm going with 20. There was a concern that the kids would like run inside the building and somebody could fall and get hurt. All right, we'll have quiet bodies in the building. Yes. And then I just heard a concern that the kids would touch things and spread germs. We will make sure that they don't touch anything. Like I'm trying to work, I'm trying to make sure that I'm trying to work within the constraints that I'm given. There was another concern that this could become a regular disruption of senior center activities. So looking it up, the Wachusett has about 5 early release days. 3 of those seem to be the Wednesday staff in-service days. So I'm thinking, I personally don't want to do 3 of them, but that seems to be the max for a special event like this. Because the other ones are for a student conference, and there was one half day before Columbus Day. So anyway, max of 3 possible disruptions, trying to find solutions here. So we compromised. We got the cap of 20 kids on March 19th. We're going to do this as a trial run. And Nancy had some great resources that she said we could use, like maybe we could try and get the art instructor to run an activity. Maybe the exercise instructor could come and run an activity for the kids. Like we had all the answers. So March 19th was going to be the Nancy facilitating the activities. And then I said, well, what about May 14th? That's the last half day for Wachusett. It's in May. If we have it outdoors and have more of my volunteers, could we please have 50 people? She said, yes, we'll do the 19th as the trial run for March with the 20 kids. May 14th, I could have 50. Excellent, we're moving forward. So my main takeaways from this is that there seems to be a fundamental difference of how we both view these events. The March 19th one, it seems like it's more of a senior center activity, a senior event that kids just come to. So it's more like a field trip for the kids where they come and they experience these little bits of the senior center. For my vision, what I would prefer to have for the May 14th one with the 50 kids is more of a student-centered activity where if seniors wanted to come and help, they totally could. You know, I'm not trying to kick anybody out of the space. If we're there and having a fundraising event and there's seniors in the CAF, that's great. Like, not trying to kick anybody out. Nancy is super passionate about protecting the resources she has built for the senior center. Her goal, in my opinion, is to safeguard the senior priorities and to make sure that Rutland seniors get everything that they need, which they're all lucky to have her on their side because she is an asset to this town. Let's see. And also, Nancy doesn't know me very well yet, and I don't know that she trusts me yet to be a good steward of this building, but my goal is to be respectful of this building and to just use this space. We don't need extra resources, we just need this space. And I would love to be given the opportunity to build that trust in a way that serves both the students and the community members. Ryan can attest. Safety is my top priority. Ryan, help me with the polar plunge. I've heard a lot of concern that there's business hours, the 8 to 3 p.m., and it seems like that is reserved for any potential senior activity that might arise. So my question is, I guess, should that building be held in reserve for potential senior use versus possibly 3 special days that could involve the community? And then I want to just I don't know why I couldn't use Glenwood School, especially since we're having the NAQUAG one at CTMS. They're going to work around, we're going to stay in our area and they're going to work around us for their PD, which is totally fine. So I don't really have an answer to that. And then if this is too much, because I know that kids are loud and they're kids, right? So if this is too much and it's just gonna be too stressful, just tell me no, and we won't do it. Like, I would rather you just tell me no, but I would love to have this community event for all the reasons. I think there's nothing but benefits here, but if it's too stressful, then let's just not do it. And I'll figure out a different fundraiser. If we do move forward, again, I would love that, but I would just love to know the exact constraints in which I'm working in, like, don't touch anything, you can be in these areas at this time, that kind of thing. Like, I'm feeling like there's hesitation, like we want to work together, and I want to work together, but I'm feeling like there's just something holding us back from working together. So that's my vision for how I would like to utilize this space for 3 special days maximum. And there we go.
Thank you. For public comment, we don't usually engage like a whole
That's
lot.
fine.
We have the building use policy that we've been looking at also. And so I appreciate you coming in and kind of voicing your experience and desires for the building as an option. So we can add it, throughout our building use policy discussion. And also, I don't know if you've been working with Nancy strictly or if you've been working with Austin or Tamika also, or.
So far, it's just been Nancy.
Okay, that's fine. So I just wanted to let you know that we're not like.
Totally fine.
I appreciate the history and the stuff. Is there anyone else for public comment?
Just one quick question. So has the toilet issue been resolved at the center?
Name and address.
Lyndon Nichols, 5 Lizzie Lane. Has the toilet issues been resolved? Because I know there's been problems with backups and use and problems with the facilities. I'm just wondering what the status of that is with that type of use.
Ready to respond?
I mean,
So I'll let the director answer that directly, but I think since I've been here, there's been several issues, not just with toilets, but with sewer lines. So DPW, I think, has done a lot of work, especially over the past year on some of the issues there. I believe they replaced some of the components of the toilets, and Nancy, please correct me if I'm wrong, some of the toilets have been replaced as well?
I believe most of them, unless I think there were 1 or 2 that were already new or already done. There's still a lot of underlying issues because the day that, I don't know if everybody knows that there was a pipe that burst in the kitchen. Mark from DPW happened to be there because the toilets were having an issue, they weren't flushing. Something might have been frozen in there and he happened to walk across to check something and then that other pipe burst. So there were probably still some underlying issues. But they did begin to address it by, replacing those parts of the toilet, each toilet. So it's fixed, is it completely fixed? I don't think we know yet.
Thank you.
I don't know if this is the time to bring it up or not, but
Name it.
while we're talking about
Identify
things,
yourself.
Sorry, name and address.
Joan Mahoney, and I'm at 14 Lizzie Lane. We also have a problem with the building in that one half of our building has not had heat for weeks, no heat. And if we get up to 50 degrees in one room in particular, a room we use all the time, it's busy all the time, there's no heat there. So today we had bingo in that room, and we had half of our bingo players who won't come because it's too cold for them. They're 90 years old and they're not gonna come sit in the cold. So what's the issue? I mean, why aren't we having that heat fixed?
I can answer it if you want, just from what I
Please do, because it's the first time I'm hearing of it.
It's not that there's no heat, it's that it's inefficient the way, and the building's been that way for years. If we get significant lengths of time where it is bitter cold, which it has been with wind, the poor insulation, the way that the whole system works, it can't reach that far end of the building, plus the fact that because of the insulation, the old windows, and the wind comes in that direction, those rooms get cold. Some years it's not noticed because we don't have these long spells, but when there are these long spells of cold weather, those rooms. So we try and keep the doors open. It's an old building. So there is heat, it just doesn't work as well as it should. And that's what I've always been told from DPW. They come, they check it, they service it, but it's limited.
I can personally attest, my toes can personally attest, there is no heat.
Well, there's no heat reaching that, or the
Right.
wind is making it that much cold, but what I'm saying is, it's not like it's broken and they're refusing to fix it. It needs to be addressed in another way,
So I think
changing some, other parts of the building.
I think that we need conversation as far as what the building needs. I mean, I think if we don't know, if Austin and DPW don't know, then nothing's gonna be able to be addressed. So I think there needs to be communication, ongoing communication with the needs of that building. And I think we also as a community need to have a realistic expectation, how much money are we going to continue to put in to that building versus at some point figuring something else out, because I think as we've seen even with the burst pipe recently, right, that there's a whole lot of additional issues there. And it's all of our taxpayers' money that's going into the building, and so is that the most effective and beneficial use of all of our money for our senior population and our community population as well? So that's, I think, another piece that we need to be mindful of as well. Thank you. Anyone else for public comment? Okay.
Through the chair.
Yeah.
If I might. Alicia, what was your purpose in coming here tonight to go public comment? Were you expecting us to give you some decision? Were you wanting it on the agenda, or just let us know what you're doing? I'm trying to figure what your objective is.
So I wanted to let you know a way that this building can be used, because I know it is a public building, and I want you to know that I'm trying to work with Nancy to make that a community event. Also just I don't know, get some general feedback if I'm hearing that's not a situation here, but why can't we use the school also? Just have those kinds of questions.
So I don't know, we don't manage the school, obviously, that would be a conversation with the principal, I believe. So I don't know if Dr.
She
Capucci,
said no.
I mean, so I don't.
That's a school committee question.
Is it a town
It's not
building though,
so
like,
senior.
so how does that, I mean, I'm not trying to pick any fights, I'm just trying to have a fundraiser where we watch your kids so you can stay at work, that's all I'm trying to do. So I don't, it's a very fine line I'm walking here.
Can I make a comment on this? They're all, yes, they're all buildings owned by the town, but at the same time, I think the reason why the principal could have said no is because it's being used for the purpose of school during those hours. Just like one thing I hope we get to tonight, and whenever this building policy is put in place, there are business hours for every department in the building. So if we decide that those business hours are typically between 8 o'clock in the morning and 5 o'clock, then that is what the taxpayers also get, are those services during those hours. After those hours, you know, then the building policy will come into place, but it doesn't mean that any group can replace those hours, because there are businesses, things going on Monday through Friday during that, so I think that's
So
a
I guess
big
my
issue.
other thing, my pushback on that is, if you have these 3 special days well in advance, could you fit them into your business hours those 3 times a year? Like
I
for
don't
the
run
school
that.
or
I mean,
the
I run
community center?
I run the senior center, so
Right.
I do
But
things
for
for the
yours also, like
seniors, for the-
any town building, could we make one accommodation during business hours?
In my opinion, not that that matters all that much, but I don't think that that should be a good policy. I think that business should run as business and then worry about what you can do with the buildings afterwards. Because things come up, I mean, I might say, okay, you can do this in March, and then all of a sudden I miss an opportunity for somebody to come in and have an event for the seniors. So, and other buildings as well.
I know you don't want a discussion. Karen Giuliano, 10 Village Way. The only thing I would say to that is, for the last umpteen million years, since the last damage was done, pretty much that building has been used for seniors only. So it doesn't have a lot of storage, so you can't put things away. It has a wall of mirrors, it has a balance bar, and as a former administrator for 48 years, children find those 2 things. You know, I don't care how good you monitor, chaperones or whatever, I've had K through college, they find those things and they could get hurt. If that building had been used as a community property right along, that wouldn't be an issue. As far as the school is concerned, again, being an administrator, if you're not satisfied and you can't meet in one of the 3 buildings that this town has, then the school committee should know about it. Because that's their responsibility, to make sure the kids are taken care of in an appropriate location. So, you know, I know you don't want discussion, but I mean, those are, to back you up,
Next steps.
to back you up.
So I think this is feedback for kind of the building use policy as we continue to work on it, for sure. And I think, you know, I appreciate the dialogue back and forth, so thank you. Is there anyone else here for public comment? Hearing none. If the board is amenable, then I would go into, do we wanna do the fire district stuff first with the chiefs? Is the board amenable to that?
It doesn't get long.
I know Ryan's phone's been going off, that's what.
Nothing's on fire yet.
No, it's not yet. We'll find out shortly. Yeah.
Is the board comfortable with that? Taking fire districts out of order?
Question, which do you think will take more time? Fire district or the, no, okay.
We're probably 5 minutes, we're at high level, 5
Alright.
minutes, maybe 10, if you have questions.
Do you wanna stay up there, or you can come up to the table, it's entirely up to you, whatever you prefer.
Alright, thank you to the board for having us here this evening. A couple weeks ago, Ryan and I met with Jen to discuss fire districts and what the potential impact that would be, or how it would look. Give you some background, as you know, in 2020, the town of Ocam was without a fire chief for a year. They approached us. I became fire chief in both towns for a year, so it was basically a regionalization of administrative services for both departments during that time. What came of that is we evaluated what the needs were at the time of the Ocam Fire Department, what their staffing level was, what their equipment capabilities were, and what ended up happening after COVID is the town of Rutland ended up taking over their ambulance service. So they divested from their own ambulance service. Town of Rutland contracted with Ocam, and for the last 5 years, we've been a contracted service to the town of Ocam, providing ambulance service. So that's one model that we've kind of regionalized on a small scale with our neighboring partner of Ocam. Regionalization in the fire service or fire districts is not a new concept. It's been around for a long time. If you want to look at Massachusetts as a point, you can look down to the Cape. You go down the Cape and most every fire department along the Cape is in some type of fire district where multiple towns have joined together, or you could even have fire districts within one community. And how that happens goes back to 1800s where you had small town villages. Each village had their own fire station. Even though it was one town, they ended up becoming fire districts within one town. If you go a little west of us, the town of Palmer has 3 fire districts in the same town. If you go to Deerfield, Deerfield has Old Deerfield and South Deerfield, 2 separate fire districts. So it is something that is out there. Fire districts are usually done and through legislative acts that they become a separate taxing authority. So they set a prudential committee of elected members and they basically hold a separate community meeting or town meeting forum to set the budgets. Now, how was this gonna impact the town of Rutland? Well, as we are in the middle of budget season and this has become a hot topic, what is coming down the line in the fire service is going to be very expensive. OSHA is now coming forward with new minimum standards for the fire departments. And what the fire departments are now going to be required to provide for service as far as level of training, expertise of staff levels, they're going to dictate what level of service is going to be required that the communities provide. As a town of Rutland, how can we achieve that when we're fighting every year for available dollars? So we need to look at, is there cost of scale if we were to join partners with neighboring communities? And for example, between Hubbardston, Rutland, and Barry, we have 7 ambulances between the 3 towns. Now, do we really need 7 ambulances between the 3 towns? Do we need 12 different fire apparatus between 3 towns? So these are the types of things that can be looked at where you consolidate staffing, consolidate capital expenditures. The fire stations will still stay in your communities and basically you're going to staff them up in a different fashion. So that's at a high level of thinking ahead. Now again, you never want to be put into a situation that due to a severe budget shortfall that you say, oh, starting July 1, we're going to regionalize with the next town, because you're not going to answer all the questions. You're going to have high anxiety within the communities because people are going to be concerned about their own local fire departments. So what we would like to do is we would like to pursue grant funding opportunities to hire Collins Center or some other large outfit to come in and do a feasibility study to answer all these questions up front. Maybe this is not for Rutland, but again, if we're looking for ways to lower the impact financially to the community, we need to be able to answer these questions. So if we're asked, hey, we've looked at this, these are the options, and for Rutland, we either say yes or no. But I'm just looking for direction from the board on that. Deputy Chief Quinn comes from the Cape, so he comes from the fire district world, so.
So in Massachusetts, we miss out on the whole county form of government. So if you look down at South Carolina, Florida, they have county fire departments. And why they work is because, well, you have vast areas of land, and you consolidate the people you have and you basically provide a service to that vast area. The only difference for us would be usually, like the chief said, districts are within one town. So making a fire district that spans multiple towns, that's a little different and kind of uncharted. So like he said, we'd have to do a study and try to figure out the feasibility of it all. So coming from a district, you basically have your own governing body. So it's run by a prudential committee, whether it's 3 members, 5 members, it depends. And basically they, make decisions for the fire department, how it's gonna run and so on and so forth. Where I come, the district was based off the water. So the town of Wareham, had basically 2 water departments, and that's where the 2 fire departments landed. That's kind of how it's based off of. So if it's done right, though, it can be efficient. It's very streamlined. You kind of only answer to really one person, and it can have huge benefits for the population.
Yeah. Can you, I know there's a concern, or there has been a concern in the past with districts on service, and will that mean reduced services with the regionalization? Can you just speak to that and how that would not actually, it might actually assist in that and getting service faster?
It's interesting that right now, because of limited manpower during the day, and just, other than full-time staff that are in the buildings in our neighboring communities, you don't have the on-call people or the, coming back to, help out when there's a large-scale emergency. So what are basically every surrounding community to Rutland right now, we all fall under what's called automatic aid. So anytime there's a reported fire, those towns are listening and they're basically being self-dispatched to us. So you're getting 4 or 5 towns within 5 minutes of the initial alarm for a fire. So again, it's something that we're technically already doing as far as moving assets and resources within our surrounding communities more rapidly. So I think it's just comes down to is, can we better restructure and spread out the resources so it covers a bigger area more efficiently, and then response times would be less to those areas. Currently, right now, if someone lives down by the Boy Scout camp here in Rutland, that's 5 miles. That's our furthest drive from the center of town down to Joanna Drive. That's the furthest distance to travel in this town. So for instance, to be honest with you, Paxton Fire Station is actually closer to Joanna Drive than we are. So these are the types of things that we need to really look at as far as asset allocation and response districts, that we can start moving resources quickly to get to the emergency quicker to save lives and property. That's our ultimate goal. And whether we save money, we may not save money in personnel costs, but we're definitely going to save money in capital costs, because not all these towns can staff all their fire engines at the same time. We can't do it. We just don't have the staffing availability. But we have to have different types of fire apparatus based whether you are in the hydrant district or outside the hydrant district. So we may have to carry water to your house because you don't live in the hydrant district. So each town has a mix of apparatus that we can move around and better strategically locate them so that that asset can be moved to that location much quicker. So, yeah.
And like you were saying, NFPA and OSHA say we have to have 16 people at a structure fire within 15 minutes. Right now, I hate to say it, but it's not possible. Every day we play the operational puzzle, and right now, and this is everywhere across the state, we can't complete that puzzle because we just don't have the resources to do it. So regionalization, creating a district, it gives you that staffing and that ability to get those 16 people on a fire. At the end of the day, it comes down to firefighter safety and providing a service to everybody. And this is, from our experience and talking to other people, this is the most efficient way to do it.
So,
I'll be honest, I got a ton of questions.
Okay.
And I don't wanna tie your time up here tonight.
That's why we're here.
So, I would like to sit down with you. I'll give you an example of what I'm looking like. What's the difference between, we've got all these towns, which is now mutual aid.
Yep.
We're gonna convert that to a district. Basically, everybody's gonna support everybody, just like it is now.
Mm-hmm.
But it gives us the capacity to have 16 people show up at a fire.
Yeah.
And we're gonna have it controlled, somewhat like dispatch. You're gonna have your own control system that sends out notices, and these are the kind of things that I'm.
Right. Now, so basically, we would still be dispatched through our regional dispatch center, through our pagers, our radios, and then they would basically announce which pieces of equipment would be dispatched to that address. If anyone listens to, the city of Worcester, when they dispatch themselves to a fire, they're sending multiple resources throughout the city. All the different firehouses are all moving in the same, so that's basically a similar concept, just on a bigger land area scale for us. Again, the reason why we wanna have the study is to be able to flush all these questions out. That way, everyone feels comfortable that, we've asked all the questions, these are the answers, this is the impact, this is the level of service, and what we see as far as providing a higher level of service and meeting response time requirements by keeping costs more efficient.
Quick questions, how much you looking for?
Oh, we're only asking for the authorization to go for grant funding. We're not asking for town
So
funds.
we're looking to have the grant funding cover the cost.
Cover the cost of the study, correct?
Okay.
Yep, but we need your authorization to allow the town administrator to sign off on an application.
Personally, a decision like this, I guess I'd want a full board for,
Just to authorize them to pursue a grant?
yes.
So a grant for a feasibility study.
I know it is.
It's not a guarantee of, it's no town expenditure resources other than you guys probably already have a sense as to where the grant money is, so it's not even going hunting for the grant money. And I mean, I think in conversations previously, Tom had mentioned just about in other conversations, the efficiency of looking to regionalize not only fire, but across the board. We know across the state, they're pushing regionalization and efficiencies. I think a lot of the questions that I have would kind of come out through the grants and feasibility study. To your point, does it even make sense? Is it feasible for Rutland? Obviously, we want something that's in the best interest of Rutland, right? I mean, we wanna help our neighbors also, but if we're doing it, we wanna make sure that Rutland's not losing anything. And I think that that's how we can do it. And I imagine there's probably some public engagement or questions that, people they would engage the community or the stakeholders to try to find what the concerns are or whatever. So I don't think personally that we need a full member board for authorizing them to apply for grants for a feasibility study personally. I think if it were a grant, if it were needed to be town matched or anything, maybe a little bit more of a conversation, but since it's sounds like it's should be fully funded. I know I had met a couple people that are in Dartmouth and they're a fire district also. And some of the questions which I think would come out in the feasibility study is the tax structure and everything based on the districts. They're, I think, unique because they have UMass Dartmouth as a big, and then there's some more populated area district and then a much less populated but much more land heavy area, and so how that looks, but I think that would come out in any sort of study where the districts, what communities it would involve or whatever, and how that would go. I think also we know a lot of our development in town is probably going to continue to happen down closer to Four Corners area, which to your point is the farthest point from center of town. And so are we looking at potentially down the road an additional fire station with those internal town costs and staffing and outfitting, or does it make sense to continue this regionalization piece? And knowing where the budget is this year and forever forward, I think we need to be mindful of how we can do that. So I think you're looking for basically, approval to authorize Austin and you as chief and deputy chief to look for a grant for a feasibility study and apply for that. I think you still would much prefer having all five of us?
Absolutely. I think what he's doing is great. Unless he can tell me that OSHA's forcing us to do this within a certain time frame, unless the state's forcing us to do this within a certain time frame,
So I could,
I don't think 2 weeks is gonna make a difference in terms of grants and everything, when we have a better fuller board. That's my personal feeling.
I think knowing what the budget situation is, and this is zero cost to the town, other than maybe a couple hours of personnel time, that I imagine the work has already been done, that we allow them to go forward, is my,
To me, the full board discussion comes once we have the results of the study to discuss. So I will make a motion to authorize the town administrator to work with Chief Knipe and Deputy Chief Quinn to pursue grants for a feasibility study for regional fire district.
I will second. I assume Harry, you're not going to second that, so I will second. Is there any additional conversation? Harry, I guess I just would question, I wanna better understand why you feel for something of this that it needs to be a 5-member board for this. At this early stage.
Well, I don't think it really matters, my opinion, because I'll be outvoted anyways, 2-1, so I can leave that kinda. I just think that a decision like this, I'm sure the board will vote for it, but I just want everybody to hear and be certain that this is what we're doing and we're applying and looking at a district model and we're gonna hire somebody to do it. And I just wanna make sure the board understands that we are doing that and in more than a 3-person board. But like I said, chances are I'll be outvoted on this. And I just wanna be safe.
Okay, I think we're authorizing for a grant opportunity and not engaging in any contract as of yet, so it's
Well,
seeking
we are
funding,
engaging
so.
in a contract when we get a grant, and the grant's gonna be used to contract with them. So we are engaging in a contract in a way. But like I said, I would rather hear from the whole board on this. Nothing against the fire department, I think it's a great thing, but I'd rather hear from the whole board.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, Harry.
Second, nay.
Ledger I.
Whitman, aye. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
thank you for your time.
Thank you for doing this. I realize that we have the liquor license for Rutland Tap and Table. Cindy here, Okay, I wanted to make sure that we didn't have them. Is the board comfortable going, I think most everyone here is for the building use policy conversation, is that correct? Okay, is the board comfortable taking the building use policy next? Thank you. So we have the building use policy. We invited Nancy and the Council on Aging to continue conversation as we know that the building on Glenwood has become the senior center over the past few years, and there's some interest, and there's always interest in having community access as well. So to continue that conversation. I think I would be interested, Nancy, to hear kind of from you and I'm sorry, I don't know who the chair of COA is, sorry. Thank you, sorry. To hear kind of your perspective of staff, sorry.
They could just open their meeting, they do have a posted
Okay.
meeting tonight.
Okay.
I hereby open up our meeting of the COA with the selectmen.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Nancy.
Is everybody okay with me sitting?
Sure.
Okay. If you can't hear me, please tell me. You made up, when you just, Leah, when you said about it is the senior center, whether people consider it the senior center or not, I would just like to at least acknowledge that the senior center, the Council on Aging and the senior center, some of you are new to the board, are actually two different entities. The Council on Aging is really the referral side of the business that we run, supporting the Executive Office of Elder Affairs, which has now changed its name officially to the Executive Office of Aging and Independence. Finally, so anyways, we support their mission, the municipalities, and part of that is, or the part of that is the Council on Aging, is the referral side. So if people need help with anything from, they don't know what to do because a family member is all of a sudden, is diagnosed with Alzheimer's and they need resources for that, or they need resources for home health care, or they don't, they need food sustainability, a number of things. That is what the Councils on Aging do. The senior centers are for the activities and the well-being for active people over 60 and over that wanna come for, events, exercise, painting classes, all of those activities. And most times, those senior centers are housed within the Council on Aging. So just to give you the idea, we have a dual function. So I would just like the building, I don't care what anybody calls it, but just to recognize the fact that this entity of the senior center and the Council on Aging is housed within the building located at 53 Glenwood Road. It's finally, we are busier, we are up to probably almost between 23 and 24% of the Rutland population is aged 60 and over. We service those people, the state wants us to service those people, we support the, not only the executive office, but then you have your entities that are like elder services that supply the Meals on Wheels, that can supply home health agents for people. So anyways, we finally built that up so that we can have a 40-hour week. And it's slim because we don't have a lot of staff. I have myself, I have one 16-hour a week outreach person, and I have a tremendous pool of volunteers. That being said, those volunteers have, because they're housed within the building, they've put a lot of effort and time and money of their own even into that building. So I think that, well, I know that they take pride in that, it's like a home away from home. So it needs to be taken care of. So I hope that whenever the policies and procedures, I understand the fact that it's a building that you may want to use for other things, but there definitely have to be policies and procedures, and the building and its contents need to be respected. And they need to understand that those contents do belong, in most cases, to the seniors. The Friends purchased and will replaced and purchased tables and chairs. And that's not to say that they couldn't be borrowed, but some of those things that have to be borrowed at a price, or at least a security deposit, because if something happens to them, they need to be replaced or repaired, and that has not happened in the past. I wish that I took a lot of pictures. I've been there for 11 years. I started in an outreach capacity for a limited amount of hours, became the director again for a limited amount of hours, and that building was atrocious because the town didn't take care of it. The people didn't take care of it. I mean, that's what happens sometimes when it's not yours. You don't care if something spills on the rug. I mean, we have eliminated furniture that was absolutely filthy, had mice feces in it, dead mice in the drawers of the kitchen, okay? 2 builders stepped up a few years back with the help of the CARES Act, not that COVID was a good thing, but it gave us some money. They stepped up, and it's a kitchen that it's not really commercial, it's basically residential with some commercial pieces in it. But again, these 2 builders stepped up, and even though we had a small budget, about $30,000 to work with, it would have cost us double to triple that if we actually were gonna put those things in place. They came forward, not even for the community, specifically for the seniors, so that they would have a place to be. Okay, so when we go through this policy, that just needs to be understood, and I don't know that respect is there. I wish I took a lot of pictures over the time. I sent Austin 3 just to give 3 different examples. It doesn't matter the order. But things get damaged when other, even departments have used it. That is that upside down?
The doorway, hold on,
Sorry.
see if I can rotate, there we go.
All right, so, yeah, it's kind of on its side, wait a minute. No, I need the grill a little bit big,
Sorry.
oh no, that one, actually, that's a different one.
Yep.
So that is just the entrance, and if you look, it gets so wet, those tiles that have been there since the building was built, They peel, and that's not the only section of the building. Water gets underneath, sand, the front windows that are the side of the door, they start to separate and you can see the sand. So as we use the building, just please keep in mind, our buildings are in pretty poor shape. And if we don't have the right policies, if we just expect, taxpayers, yes, but taxpayers get a lot of things for their tax money. They get the services that all of the departments provide. So if we take a building that's already in sad shape and just let it be used with no, supervision, people just going in whenever they want, you're just shortening the length of the time, and we don't have money to fix it. This is an example, tax work-off people fix this. DPW have fixed some of the things too, but people pull at things. There was trash stuffed in there, candy wrappers, they stand on the baseboard and it's been crushed. We have carefully taken that off, banged the dents out, repainted it. People have made curtains. CNS carpet came in at a high discount, replaced the carpets that were atrocious. There are still carpets in some of the offices that probably, I wouldn't even want anybody to peel them up that wasn't prepared, because I don't know what kind of mold or something is under them. So if you can see to the left of that, even the tile there is in poor shape. At most of the entrances, if there's a closet or the rear door, same thing. So that right now does not look like that. That's an old picture. Like I said, it was taken off the wall, kind of banged out, repainted, put back up. Another picture I have of, this we came to on a Monday morning. There was some use of the building that weekend, and I have no idea what happened. All I can do is I tell you, it was made out of the kind of glass that's in a lot of the tables, and sometimes I had one just burst from you just tap it right, but the whole thing falls apart, and it falls apart in little beads. If you were to go up close on this, that is not what happened. This was struck somehow, or the whole top would have come out. And the police came because we just walked into it, and nobody was ever held accountable. Well, I don't know, maybe it just kind of, it happens to that material, but it doesn't happen in that way. We've had blinds that are broken, tables that are broken, and nobody's held accountable for it. And you know what? We don't have a large budget, so between the budget we do have and our friends group that raises a lot of money and works hard to do it, it should be for them, if that's the group that is organizing it. We have a lot going on there. Many years ago, it was a handful of stuff that went on, but it's a department, an existing department. Every department in this town has a function. A function for a reason, and they're all important for what they do. So I just ask whatever this policy and procedure is, that we do have just that, policies and procedures. The building needs to be respected. We had a group in the fall where Officer Brendan McShay used that building. I would work with him any day. I didn't even know he was there. He was respectful. You couldn't tell that they were there, and he had the community come in. But he also took care of it, and so did the people that attended that. But that's not always the way, because, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but and kids, nobody's gonna help it. They wanna run, they wanna move. That's why you have to have it structured if you're gonna hold an event like that. That's the story of what we do there. We've got a lot going on, and the other thing is do I wanna open it up to, looking at a specific, like our newsletter? That's just an idea of what we do, because our newsletter goes to print the middle of the month before. So there are things that get scheduled that don't hit the newsletter. There are things that may change the date, and it's very difficult to compete with, well, you're not using this building between 2 and 3, so I wanna put some, cause it just takes up more of my time or my volunteers' time to try and organize something. So that's why we finally went to the 40 hours, so we could work within that time frame. Do we close at 3? That's not the hours we have it. Right now, we choose to stop activities around 3 so that I can get some of the actual paperwork done that I can't get done when people are just consistently walking in and out of the building. You have to, it's customer service those other hours. So that's what we use the building for. I know the board has some concerns and I'll
The
let you
board has some
speak next.
concerns about, safety, bringing children into a building that's not child-proof. And that's nothing against kids, worked with them for 48 years, so I don't have any problem with it, from preschool on. But they are inquisitive, and they like to explore, et cetera, and they don't always understand, you can't touch that, it doesn't belong to you. If we had the space to put things away, that would be different, then we're talking a different ballgame. So safety, certificate of insurance for the people who are using the building. How do I know if they're safe, in terms of being insured? It can't come back on the senior center or even the town, that's not healthy. Security, who's gonna secure the building, let them in, let them out? Who's gonna sanitize it, especially if you have children with neurovirus and all of that? We have several people in the building, even today, there were 4 people the people that were there who have autoimmune diseases. Bringing in people, just off the cuff or whatever, and using the building and not sanitizing or cleaning after them, who's gonna do that? Heat, light, and all of that, I think, Austin, you said that the town technically takes care of that, fine. Toilet paper is shared, the expense of that. So again, who's gonna pick up the share that needs to be at the center? That's getting more expensive by the minute, and if it comes from China, we're in big trouble. So, those are the things that we're very concerned about. Should there be a fee if you're gonna use it? If it's just a meeting in one little room and you're sitting there, that's one thing. If they're bringing in coffee and food and whatever, who's gonna clean up immediately after it? Because you already have a mice problem. And technically, it ends up in the offices, which is not okay. So we're dealing with that already. How big a deal is this gonna be moving forward? And again, I had a multi-purpose building. I had the disabled in there, I had everybody else, but we had all of these things in order before we ever opened the doors to the public. There were fees involved, there were certificate of insurances, there was security, and if anybody had a gathering in our bigger room, which would be our center room, they had to have a policeman on duty if it was over a certain number. Who's gonna pay for that? Wear and tear on the building alone, just the floors. Once they're washed and waxed or whatever, who's gonna take care of that afterwards? Those are some of the concerns, and I think, Jessica, do you have? Go ahead.
I would be concerned about the liability to the town if there isn't proper insurance. Just so that, I know you had said that the PTO has insurance, but for how many kids versus how many adults, kids coming in, like you said, kids are kids. Sometimes they get hurt, but having that, I would definitely be concerned about that on behalf of the town and the Council on Aging. And like Karen said, germs, sanitizing, protecting our seniors, that building is for seniors right now, and protecting the senior citizens that come in, would be the primary concern.
I did email to Maya, because I had talked to Tamika a little bit, just to make sure that they didn't have, an issue. Where does the liability fall? Because especially during the hours of the senior center and that first date, the reason that I wanted it, we came to the agreement as far as if I could run it as an event so that we could show what the seniors do during a given day. So have the art teacher do a little session, have one of the exercise instructors, which I think would be positive kind of PR anyways. Hopefully the kids would have a good time and go home and tell their parents, so this is what I learned. But where does that liability lie? Because if we're using it during the hours of the senior center and a child gets hurt, where does that fall? I have not heard back from them yet, but I did make that known to you that I would have to at least hear back. And I did tell Austin, I'm trying to work with people and do things, but
And I'm still
again, I
concerned
feel
about a
strong
wall
it
of
needs to
mirrors.
be- Yeah,
I'm still concerned about a wall of
and I
mirrors.
think it needs to be
To be honest
during-
with you, I'd take the darn things down before I'd let a kids group in. I know you can't. That's a whole different thing. But again, because a lot of stuff was donated, it's not necessarily even the town stuff either. These are people who have donated stuff, but a wall of mirrors with little kids, accidents happen. It's just the way it is. And it can happen like that. Even with 2 proctors standing there looking at them, it still can happen.
So I think it should be after the hours that it's utilized, if that's what you decide, but again, with rules, with policies. Mike is here today, he's one of the people in the tax work-off program. I know when he first came to the center, after he retired, and you can stop me if I'm saying the wrong thing, but one of the nicest things you said to me was, you know what? I want our senior center to be as best as it can be. And he goes above and beyond with some of the other tax work-off people and gives the town a lot more hours in a lot of departments than they have to, than that they are compensated for. And so I don't want their work to go to waste, and all of a sudden, they're not there to continuously fix it, but they've brought that building to a point where it looks nice. And it was a lot of work to do that, and it still costs money to do it. So anyways.
Michael Kapazicki, I'm the Mike that she's talking to. As she said, when I started 3 years ago approximately, and when I walked into that building, I go, holy crap. This building is in pretty bad shape. Holes in the walls, when it was open to kids, they had baseball inside there, baseball holes in the walls, things hanging all over the place. In 3 years' time, we've done a lot to bring up that center. The budget isn't big. We've donated, of course, my time isn't really donated, but yes, it really is, because we don't put in 50 hours. Through the town, I probably put in close to 200 hours during the year. But we've done a lot of things to make the center look presentable, make it look good for the people that come there and even visitors that come into there. No offense to kids and stuff like that, but they contributed, and of course, these programs sound a little bit different, but they contributed to a lot of the damage that was there when I first started there. And we've been working at correcting holes in the walls and different things that have happened to the center. And there's a lot more that needs to be done. For those of you who have been there, and I've noticed a lot of you people have been there, the windows are gone. It must cost the town a fortune just to heat that building, because the windows are all shot. The vinyl siding is disgusting. It's mold all over the place. It's on the exterior, at least the interior looks better than the exterior. The exterior looks horrible. So anyway, I work with 3 other guys who are part of the town write-off system, and we do what we can do. And I think we've done a fairly good job to bring it to the point where it looks. And I certainly would hate to see anything, once again, no offense to the kids, hate to see anything that may damage things. Wall of mirrors is certainly a concern, but, it's, we just like to keep the building where it's at. And of course, there's a lot more we'd like to see that building happen to that building during the coming year or so. Whether it's gonna happen or not, we don't know, but we do our best.
And along with the safety issue, it's not just the opening and closing of the building. What if it snows? What if there's ice while the people are in there and we have a little ice storm? Who's gonna take care of all of that? I think that needs to be spelled out, because Nancy's not gonna come in at 5, 6, or 7 o'clock when they're having the meetings, and no one else is going to. So all of that needs to be addressed so that the i's are dotted and the t's are crossed, so we don't have to play catch-up and correction we already have in order.
So we have a few different building use policies, and I appreciate hearing your comments and feedback. I think some of what I'm hearing is the frustration of the condition of the building when the COA and senior center moved into there. I don't know what the building use policy was prior to that. My kids participated in the scouts and the sports that probably put the holes in the walls. But I don't know that there was a building use policy at that time. I think in the community as a whole, there's some frustration that it was sold to the town as a community center years ago I believe in the 90s, as a full-out community center, and over the years has transitioned more and more to exclude the entire community and be solely focused as a senior center. And I don't think anybody disagrees that the seniors need their own center and need your own space. I don't think anybody's arguing with that. Right now, though, I think we're trying to find a compromise when the building is empty. I'm not sure, Nancy, what your hours are, 8 to 4, I think, I don't know for sure. But when the building is empty in the afternoons or evenings, that it's not as easy with a building use policy in place, that it's not as easy for other groups to go in and utilize a building that is sitting empty.
And in principle, I agree with you.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, having meetings in there is one thing. Pickleball, not gonna work. Badminton might. But, you know, I mean, it's the whole policy, what does that entail? I mean, the policemen that came in, your program there, the citizens thing,
Yep.
that worked out fine.
Although I
That
was
was
there and the
after-
clock fell off the wall, we weren't
Well,
even in the
there
room
you
and the
go.
clock fell
There
off
you
the
go.
wall.
Somebody must have hit that and knocked it just enough and then it
We
fell,
weren't,
because
that was
it's
a night
been
we
there for
weren't even in the
years.
room at all, and it just like all of a sudden we were like,
See what I mean? Who's liable? No.
right?
But I mean, after hours is one thing entirely. Trying to juggle and have children in there when it's a space not really conducive to them is not fair to the kids either. I don't think anybody should be saying, stay away from that, don't touch that. That's not fair. That's not the reason they're there. So that's not good. So it has to be a good policy that allows for both things to happen.
And to your point just now with the clock, Officer McShay called me and told me about it. And that's all I've ever wanted. It's so many other times, something else has been broken and nobody even left a note or said, I'm sorry. I wouldn't even care if they broke it, at least if they told us about it. But that's the kind of thing that would happen. Blinds, I mean, hanging off the wall, and they're metal blinds, completely bent, no one did them. I even had someone go so far as to tell me it could have been a vagrant that snuck in the building right through the class of parents where their children were in the next room, broke the blinds, and no one said anything. I mean, those are the far-fetched stories we were getting. So if there's a policy in place where at least they have to check this off and things have to be in the same condition they were when they got there, or they at least have to be notified. And if it's something substantial, they need to replace it or fix it.
Jen, Harry?
Yeah, question. I'm holding in my hand here a Rutland Community Center building use regulation checklist and Community Center building use regulations. The regulations, this goes back originally to adopted February 22nd, 2000, amended October 17th, 2016, February 12th, 2018, and the regulations effective 2016. So this has been in existence for a long time. Has anybody used that?
Yeah, in fact, I was one of the people that wrote it when Margaret was here.
Yeah.
There were a few of us together that wrote that, and we've revised it a few times. I mean, Austin and I have talked about that. This, at least we use the most current as a building use, so we have the person fill it out, like when the police had the boot camp. So at least we know who's in the building and what dates and times they've been in the building.
So this regulations, does that pertain to what Alicia's trying to do?
Well,
she
if for
fills this
now, if
out?
we don't have anything new, we would at least fill out the current one.
Okay,
Again, we need to hear back from the insurance company, because even the one in March, which hopefully it would be nice enough to hold at least half of it outside. Because that's a lot of people in the building, and I think another big conception, that building has never, ever contained a gym. We had a group of parents, I found out it was a group of dads who wanted to practice and didn't have an outdoor place. It was a church. That's why it has a high ceiling. It was never built as a gym. That's why it got damaged, because people used equipment that the building wasn't built for that. So it's like playing baseball in here. You're gonna end up with holes in the wall, right?
so I guess I'm concerned or confused, I guess. If this thing has been around for 24 years, how did we end up with holes in the wall, nothing being reported and all that, if we have this to use?
Nobody followed it, like many other things they did. They just didn't follow it and were not held accountable for it. I think that's.
I mean, I think all of that was before, I mean, this is getting back into the history and kind of off topic, but all of that was before we had a town administrator. And so it was really, I don't know how the groups that were using it processed it, but that's.
I'm just curious, because we're trying to put together a building policy and I come across regulations already. that have been enforced for 24 years.
The other thing that
So-
should be in there is a checklist, so anybody who's using it should come to the building, walk through it, and understand what they are responsible for.
Right,
Then
checklist
they
is
don't know.
right here.
Right, yeah, I know, I wrote that.
So, Nancy, can I say something? Are
You
you,
have to ask here, yeah.
You're fine. I mean, we're a joint meeting, and then I'll let Lyndon go, but we're a joint meeting, so.
I just, oh, do I have to ask your permission to say? 'Cause-
You ask me permission, now that'd be a first.
No, you usually just tell me what to do. The other thing
Yeah,
that I
right.
wanna make sure that
Right.
you have on your list when you're doing the overall policy, that I think is very important, particularly at the senior centers, if you have a group coming in after hours, that Karen has suggested that there be a police officer if you have over a certain number of people. But again, if it's gonna be the main room and there's gonna be a number of people there, I think we really ought to make sure that someone from DPW is going to be there as well to clean that room after them. Because seniors come in early in the morning and we have exercise class after exercise class. All they have to do is slip on one slippery spot. All they have to do is trip over one ball. Broken hips are, we know a lot of people with broken hips at our age, so we don't wanna know anymore. So I think from a liability standpoint, there should also be a DPW person that either comes in first thing in the morning or comes in at night and really cleans after we have an outside entity come in there.
Or the other group is responsible for
Yeah.
paying for cleaning from an outside company.
Could
I
you
don't know
just
that we
clean
can-
up after yourself, like, is that an option?
Really, because it never gets done right, it really should be cleaned. I mean, we went through this with COVID too, especially when it's during some kind of a season. We just were asked by people in our own place with RSV going around, and we spray and wipe down exercise equipment. So when I had to get 3 quotes during COVID, of course, it was basically unaffordable. I think it was almost $600 then to have a professional cleaning company come in, because so many people, it's a big building. So many people have to come, it was about $600, it wasn't cost effective, and that was just to run recreation programs, that was our own town. But they didn't do it, so the town decided not to do it, the former town administrator, so.
Lyndon, I know you had
Go
a
ahead, sorry.
comment or a question.
Yeah, just an observation, especially when we've been talking about the condition of the buildings. Obviously, our infrastructure in town is in very poor condition, including this library, which is much younger than the community center. Also, I just want to comment, community center is a term that's used across the states. It may house a library, it may house recreation, it's the name of a building. It doesn't mean just open to the community for whatever they want. That name is misleading, and the intent is really on the town to determine that. Based on the issues that we have in the building currently, that recent broken pipe, finding a rotting sill, some of the conditions, I'm really disappointed that we would have a conversation regarding building use without the DPW being here. There should be somebody representing the buildings, which is the DPW's responsibility if we're gonna discuss the use, and especially if you're looking to expand the use of facilities that are currently not being maintained, you're just gonna be putting more wear on facilities that are not currently in the shape that they should be. So I guess I question why the board doesn't have the DPW more involved in this conversation, and what are their thoughts if we are in desperate need of improvements in our infrastructure, why are we expanding the use and creating more wear on these facilities?
So I think, if I may, I think for the library, we worked with the library trustees because that's the MGL sets that, right? And now we invited the senior center council on aging for this conversation. If you look, recreation's not here. Alicia's here speaking as a PTO member, but not as a recreation. The plan is to meet also with recreation and understand that we're not making decisions tonight. And obviously, we hear from the community that there's a big need for more meeting space and activity space and opportunities to utilize our buildings. And so we're trying to meet the public as well as the town, and if it's public and we are collecting fees, then that goes towards upkeep of the building or heat or whatever. So it's not a done policy by any point. This is a conversation that we wanted to hear your feedback tonight and what your concerns are and what you see as the challenges and the needs. And we know we did the study, right, the municipal services study that was maybe not sold to people in this room as a true opportunity to engage in your true wants and needs. I question, is the donated kitchen ADA compliant with everything that went in there? That the building really, with that level of work, should be ADA compliant. Is the kitchen ADA compliant? We know we need to do a lot more I think even just tonight, we're jotting down a whole list of things that the building itself needs. How much do we continue to invest in the building versus utilizing grant opportunities and partial funding opportunities to potentially look at a new opportunity for seniors and recreation combined or whatever? Because I would argue that actually it's all human services, right? So we can do the same work together if we have the adequate space. And so what does that look like and how can we work with what we have and then work towards the future?
Can I ask this, once you kind of come up with a policy, will you consider that a draft and offer an opportunity to comment on it? Or is it just gonna go through?
It's kind of
Should be a draft. Should be a draft.
No, I'm just curious.
Select board is responsible for setting the policies, right? And so
Right, I understand that.
policies are nice because they can be amended at any time. But I would think once we have a draft, I would envision it going out, not a whole lot of dialogue back and forth because we're trying to take some of that feedback tonight from this group and from.
And not everybody's gonna get what they want.
Exactly.
I get that.
Exactly.
I get that.
But I also want to try to be mindful of what happened in the past, but also to Harry's point, if it wasn't followed in the past, then what do we need to do to ensure that it is followed now? And is that empowering a facilities management part of DPW, or does it stay with kind of the building owner, or does it go through the town administrator? What does that look like, and how can we ensure that the policies are better enforced across the board to protect everybody?
Got it.
Does that
I just wanted to clarify on it. So my point was on the structure, not on the use of the building. That it's not in a condition that would open it to additional use when it's not being currently maintained. So I'm talking more structure than how you use the building, I could care less. I think the increase in use on these facilities is just gonna cause more problems, more wear and more issues.
Can I just comment that if there's a requirement for a police presence and or a mandated like professional cleaning, that will likely become cost prohibitive for small groups to use. So
That's true.
we would wanna be respectful of the space and utilize the space, but it would probably price us out of the market there.
Well, again, I'll go back to your situation. You should be allowed to use your own school. I'm sorry, but I would fight that right to the bitter end. You know, school committee, whoever, there are 3 buildings in this town, you should be able to bring your group to one of them.
I like the
God
idea of
knows how
working
many
together.
classrooms you have, come on, we're not talking about a huge space. And school buildings, for the most part, except for the gym and maybe the cafeteria, but not every day, there's space right there. You should be able to meet in your own buildings.
Especially when
shouldn't
the
have to go to
Central
somebody
Tree
else.
met your request, because that was originally gonna be the library, then they met your request.
Yeah, we did reserve the library.
And I
So, I
understand
think
your
this is-
frustrations, but.
going like a little bit off the
Yeah.
building use policy? You continue to work with the school.
That's the only reason I brought it up. She needs support and someplace to go.
Right. But I think also and I think Nancy, you and I have talked about it in the past also about ways to kind of bridge the multi-generational piece of.
And we're looking into a pen pal.
Right.
We are trying to do an intergenerational kind of
That's why I
thing.
suggested the
of what we
lower
can
number
do,
of kids,
what
not
we
the
can do.
replacement
Right.
of baby
But I just,
daycare.
like I said, I just wanted to, and I know since I've moved to town 14 years ago, the half days have been a huge challenge for working families. Because there is no care. And so I appreciate the PTO and groups trying to find that, but also understand the needs of the seniors, and so we're trying to find something that we can be amenable to and work together with, so. I think, Jen, did you have any questions? Harry, did you have any?
Nope, I'm
Nothing
good.
that's already been covered.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The list of stuff, and I know Tamika gets it all.
Carrie, you guys just have to close your meeting.
Adjourn the meeting? All in favor?
We're done.
I'm staying, but.
Oh, good.
Moving on, we have the liquor license for Rutland Tap and Table.
I wanna get some other senior centers. Well, some of my
The
responsibilities have.
ABCC approved the so if the board recalls, we approved their local license, then it had to go to the ABCC. The ABCC has since come back with the approval, so now we just need a motion to sign the license.
Yeah, well, I know, yeah.
Do you mind holding just a minute? I can't hear very well. I'm sorry.
See you on the 14th. Oh, that's right, I put it on the wall, the
I
cupcake.
told them I'm bringing Hershey's Kisses to make up for it.
Oh, okay.
It's Valentine's Day.
So we have the liquor license for Rutland Tap and Table. We just need a motion to sign the liquor license. Everything is approved and ready to go, I think, from ABCC. And I believe Clee is working with fire chief and building inspector to finalize everything else. So is there a motion to sign the liquor license for Rutland Tap and Table?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions, comments, concerns? I'm excited for them to open. Roll call, Harry.
Second, aye.
LaDry.
Whitman, aye. We are all over the place, sorry guys. Are you okay if we continue through business, Austin, before going to communication, member comments, announcements, town administrator update? Are you okay with that?
Absolutely.
Um,
Just in lieu of my lengthy presentation, I won't have an update for you tonight, other than, can I just quickly tell you? My brief update is, I wanna congratulate the fire department, they got a grant from Department of Fire Services for $15,000 to replace existing equipment like turnout gear, things like that for the fire department, so
Congratulations,
kudos
awesome,
to Chief Knight.
thank you. We have the seasonal liquor license renewal for Rutland Marketplace. As the board recalls, we had issued a seasonal liquor license for Rutland Marketplace that would allow them to sell full alcohol during kind of the busy season, April 1st April 1st through December 31st, I think, right? So
It says January 15th, 2026.
I think that that's while they can do their renewals, right?
So, if I may, last year in the discussion with the applicant and the board, at the time it was decided that December 31st seemed to make the most sense because it was the end of the calendar year. However, MGL Chapter 138 allows them to go as far as January 15th into the following calendar year. With the first year under their belts, they found it difficult to get that product off of the shelves and explain it to their customers all during the holiday kind of hustle and bustle of their business. So this year on their application, they are requesting to go out to January 15th of 2026, just to give them a couple extra weeks to kind of get that off the shelves until April 1st comes around again.
And that's, thank you, Tamika, and thanks, Jen. That's the, this is the seasonal one, so per MGL, it's allowed. And I think they found it to be a big benefit for them last year, especially with the road closure and everything, but, and I think the community has really appreciated it, having kind of a one-stop as they're stopping to grab dinner or snacks or lunch or whatever also. So I would entertain a motion to approve and sign, right, Tamika?
Yes.
Approve and sign a seasonal liquor license for Rutland Marketplace for April 1st, 2025 through January 15th, 2026.
So moved.
Is there a second for discussion?
Second.
Conversation? Any questions or comments? Roll call, Harry.
Second, aye.
Ledger I.
And I. Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yeah.
Do you mind if we do the budget? I just wanna be mindful of Donna's time. Karen, are you here for the budget?
That was one of the things, yep.
Alright, what? Just cause I don't want you to wait until the end of the night. Do you mind if we
That's,
do it now?
that's totally fine. I just figured it was gonna be a long, presentation, but if that's why you guys are here, then go for it, cause we're here no matter what.
Alright. Pretty cool photo, currently of town hall. Kidding. Good evening, members of the board. I'm gonna use this fancy podium just cause it feels more official and this is an official proceeding, I guess. Just give me a moment. Alright. So here tonight just to present the preliminary recommended budget for FY 2026. As you know, we've been talking about the budget situation for a long time now. Just to give you an idea of what we'll be talking about tonight. Just a quick review, and I did send these slides to the Finance Committee and Select Board earlier just to review it ahead of time. I don't think there's been any changes to the slides thus far from when I sent it this afternoon. So we'll be just going over a brief overview of the budget process to date, an overview of our projected revenues and expenses. Obviously, we'll be discussing some of the projected shortfalls for this year and future years. I wanna have a brief discussion about options for the upcoming budget process and other considerations. One of the things I'd like the board to consider, and we'll talk about that later on, is possibly a later town meeting date. So we have published the preliminary recommended budget book. This is an abbreviated version from FY 25, simply because I think that there's some policy decisions that the board and finance committee I think need to discuss, and we will discuss on the 13th at the joint body. So what is missing from this budget book is a lot of the information like staffing breakdown, and some of the detail for each of the departments, as well as the capital plan, which is still underway, as I mentioned in my budget message in this book. So this is strictly budget requests thus far, and as well as from the policy directive, reduced budget requests as well. Yep.
Peter's no longer the clerk, Lynn is.
Oh, I'm sorry. I copied last year.
I
Are
know.
you the clerk?
No, Lynn is.
Okay. Congratulations, Lynn.
I just figured,
I'll
you know,
update the book,
I
thank
said
you.
it, that's the reason why I'm bringing it up, cause I know it's nitpicky, but
No, it's good feedback, I appreciate that. This book that is incorrect can be found on www.rutlandma.gov/finance, also known as our budget and financial information page. There's also a button on the front page of the website that will bring you directly to this page. And you can access the budget book as well as the slides from tonight, they're already published online. So, I won't go through all of this, but this has been, from what I can remember and what I could briefly find this weekend, when I was working on these slides, this has been the process to date. Just before I went on my honeymoon, I presented the multi-year financial model, projecting about a $2 million deficit for this year. And in the months since then, I've been asking for advice from this board, from finance committee. We've had a joint meeting or two to talk about this. In mid-December, the board directed town departments to prepare that was mid-October, level funded budget requests. And we sent out those budget instructions early November and received them early December. In mid-December, we also attended, myself, Leah as select board chair and Alex as FinCom chair, attended a Wachusett kind of budget retreat, which provided high level services budget Not a lot of detail, just again, very high level, which again was sent to both boards. Mid to late December, the finance team, we met with all town departments to review their budget requests. The following day, I attended a joint select board FinCom meeting where we also, I think, met with the school committee members and just provided an update. There was, I think, a mutual agreement from both boards to wait a little bit from, I think, what we did the previous year to try to see if their Wachusett budget figures are a little bit more clear. Late December or late January, I provided another brief update, again, kind of confirming the approximately $2 million deficit, and it appeared that there was an indication towards a potential Prop 2.5 override. After that directive, I met with town departments last Monday to request their proportionate share of budget reductions due by the end of last week. And I spent the entire weekend, and Donna has been a great help also preparing this, preparing the, what would be quote unquote an override budget and reduced budgets that are in your budget book tonight. I'm gonna first start with the override budget. So, these are our projected revenues to date. So, for FY '26, our prior year levy limit of just about 21.7 million, automatic with the Prop 2.5 increase. Just to be a little bit more conservative, going down to $250,000 in new growth. I do have a new growth slide on the next slide to talk about some of the history there. We have some estimated excluded debt of, I'm gonna round up and just say just under $700,000. State aid, there's a slide as well talking about that. Governor's House 1 budget provides, right now in the House 1 budget provides approximately a $40,000 increase in net state aid after our assessments. And we are level funding local receipts, as well as the transfers in is strictly transfers in just for operation of cable. So that comes from the PEG revolving fund. As per town policies, for our forecasts, we are not including any use of reserves or free cash, as well as any ARPA funds in this original revenue projection. So, new growth. So our tax levy growth has kind of been all over the place for the past 10 fiscal years or so. I think we've had some really good years. For example, in 2018, you see we're just over 550,000. FY '25, we also had another strong year, 500,000. Most, if not all of that, as you can see, the blue is residential growth, whether it's new homes, additions to homes, modifications. That is what we classify as, and we were able to capture as new growth revenue. We also contracted with RRC to assist us with our personal property valuation. So you can see that we had in FY '25 most recently a decent amount of growth in our personal property as well as commercial growth as well. Some of the policies related to projections for new growth require us to be conservative on our new growth estimates, kind of taking into averages for 3 years as well as some other years. This is based off of recommendations from our assessor's office.
Question?
Yep, of course.
Why the huge spike in commercial?
So we had a couple of businesses come online, most notably the facility for High Hawk Farms, the cannabis facility.
Yeah.
I think we had some other,
I think it was also, doesn't that include the Jordan's Farm?
Reclassification?
Jordan's
Oh.
Farm.
and yes, thank you. And we also had a very large operation that was valued appropriately. Let's just say that.
Okay,
Good, is it? Okay.
so now it's coded properly.
Yes. Yeah. Any other questions, sir?
Good, thank you.
All right. So for local receipts, FY '25 I think was another strong year, or FY '24, and which created our FY '25 projections, I think was a strong year for motor vehicle excise. As you can see, I'm sorry, for local receipts, as you can see, motor vehicle excise and charges for services is a significant portion of our local receipts budget. We also had a very strong year in investment income. We are proposing to level fund that based off of I think our treasurer collector's projections on investment income. Some of the things that are a little bit more stable and tied to the economy are things like meals tax, some fees, other departmental revenue, licenses and permits. Those are kind of hard to gauge, and simply put, Department of Revenue does not allow us to estimate higher unless we can absolutely demonstrate that we will receive those in the current or upcoming fiscal year. So we have to kind of level fund this, just to be simple. So this next slide is just a chart, kind of a breakdown of
question
local
also?
receipt, yep.
Sorry not to interrupt you. Just going back to the motor vehicle excise.
Yep.
Knowing that the older your car gets, the lower the value is it normal to level fund that? Are we like do you know what I'm
Yeah,
trying
so-
to say?
Even with that, that's a great question. I think even with that, our motor vehicle excise, and I think in your budget book, there's actually a history since FY19 that showed the breakdown, actual revenues of motor vehicle excise. It continues to grow.
Okay.
And, you know, maybe with the economy, hopefully people, if you're listening, please buy a new car. It'll help us and live in Rutland. It'll help our local receipts for next year. So I think that's always been the case, but it has continued to grow.
Okay.
I think what we budgeted in FY25, we budgeted just under 1.6 million, was that the budget? And we received a little bit more than that.
Yeah, I don't.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think also, I think also a lot of people are on leases, so they're
Yes.
periodically, you know,
That is a very, very good point, yes, and the
Three.
leases, yep.
3 years, there's some, but it's not.
And then the new lease is the newer vehicle and the higher
value.
yeah.
Got it, thank you.
Question?
Yep.
On the 180,000 of investment income, what's the principal that's based on?
Only general fund so that is none of the stabilizations fund, it's only what's considered general fund. It's because the interest rates are so high right now that we've been doing such a great job on that.
Are we looking at 5 million, 3 million worth of asset principal? That 180 grand is working for us?
Very good question, I'm not sure I would be comfortable saying that right now. I don't like giving numbers unless I know they're exactly correct, but I think your estimate it sounds reasonable, yes. As I'm thinking in my head of reconciling cash every month
Yeah.
and what is a general fund, so yes, I that seems reasonable, Harry, but I'm an exacting accountant and I'm not comfortable saying that.
No, I'm
for
looking at
certainty.
it going, 180,000 a year is a pretty good amount of money for interest rates based on a principal amount that it's earning on. And I'm thinking, we've gotta have a lot of money in investments to earn that. So even taking, say, 3% of 180,000, that's quite a bit of money.
So some of it is the sale of real estate, that is a general fund considered general fund money, and so that right now is pretty significant. And that and interest rates are why we have increased so much in that particular line item for revenue. So it's not something that we can sustain for 10 years, right? Interest rates will matter, and at some point, we're gonna use that sale of real estate money somewhere.
You're talking about
That's
the
the
money
Heights
with
money.
The Heights
Rutland,
money.
you're talking about
Thank
the
you.
money at Rutland, right?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So this is just kind of a chart breakdown to give you an idea between kind of those large two funds or categories, how much they account for local receipts. And this next chart is kind of showing that history that's also shown in your budget book. This is just since FY19 actuals and some of our budgets over the years, so you can just see since FY19 some of the growth there for local receipts.
Austin, for the pilots, I know we have some with the state for the state park and all the DCR land and everything. Do we have solar pilots also? Is that mostly our pilots?
No, so those I think fall under tax. Personal property tax. This pilot revenue at the tune of, I think, I'm gonna round up, it's not quite, but 550,000. I think it's less than that. This is for the state-owned land from DCR, one of those.
Yeah, cause there's two some comes on a cherry sheet and some comes as local revenue, and this one is DCR and the other one is state owned, so it depends on what agency owns it.
Okay, thank you.
Great question. So state aid, as I mentioned earlier, the governor released her budget, last week or 2 weeks ago at this point. We did receive cherry sheet estimates. Right now, it's tracking just to be about, as I mentioned, about $40,000 higher than our FY '25 budget. I do think that this will change. Just as the legislature begins developing their budgets, I think that our net state revenue will probably shrink a little bit. That's what happened in FY '25. It pretty much happens every year. The state legislature decides to pay for things, and they end up using some of these cherry sheet assessments to pay for them. So for example, our regional transit budget in FY '25, I think it was like $7,000, and they slightly increased it to just under $10,000. So I don't think it will shrink tremendously, but I do not think that 1283 will be the final number, so we'll have to, as we continue through this process, make adjustments. The unrestricted general government aid, the governor has increased by 2.2% for this year. And I'll talk a little bit about that.
Question?
Yes, sir.
Two things, Austin. One is, we get money for air pollution?
No,
That's an
that's
assessment.
an assessment.
Okay.
Can you speak to that? Do you know what that's for?
And the retired teacher's health insurance
I can speak.
is expected to go down?
So that, these are, the down below, their state assessments, and so that's revenue they take from us, from our state revenue.
Yeah.
And so they are school teachers that have retired, that before we regionalized, when it was a Rutland school, the state has this assessment. And so they set those assessments every year, so yes, we have no control over that.
Okay, okay.
I think, Harry, to your point, they might be going down because it's an aging population and there's nobody else going into that because that was pre-regionalization, if I understand correctly.
Yes,
And
yep,
so
yep.
that would be, the maximum number would have been however many years ago. And so over the years, we would be seeing a decrease in the number of individuals in that pool.
That is true.
So if I can just go from state aid back up. So state aid, we're expected to get $113,579
No,
that the state's gonna pay us.
no, 1.3 million in bold.
No, I'm looking down here under state aid, it says state-owned land, $113,579.
Sorry, it's in state owned.
Is that part of the pilots? Or is
No.
that something separate?
So, separate, yep, so that's state-owned land, the
Yeah.
state owns that land in town.
Yeah.
They set how much they would provide us, it's not the same as a real estate bill, they determine that. The other that we receive, is DCR, so in essence, it's state, it doesn't come on the cherry sheet, so we recognize it on local revenue.
Okay. Thank you.
Alright, so this is a fun slide. So this kind of takes a chart and looks at, obviously the bars are our state revenue, our net state aid since FY '19. There's a gray, it's the lower line, and it uses the axis on the right. That shows our actual state aid growth rate from FY '19, or actually, I'm sorry, I missed one, FY '20 to 2026. The line on the top is actually the Commonwealth of Massachusetts' actual state revenue growth rate. It's tremendous. Mass Municipal Association has done a lot of advocacy on this to try to close that gap a little bit. Candidly, the state is making a lot of money, and we are not seeing a proportionate or closer to a proportionate share of state aid growth. And this is not just a recent problem, it's decades of challenges that we have at the local level. One of the challenges I think that a lot of people have always mentioned is UGA or lottery aid. I don't think we've ever truly received the funds that I think have been promised with that. But I just wanted to show that the town continues to have to fund our proportionate share of our expenses with it seems like less assistance from the state, so. Just wanted to point that out. Just another overview, this is a copy of the previous slide, just to give you another look briefly at our projected revenues for FY '26. Want to jump into our expenses. So this is a condensed version of the budget summary that's found in your budget book. I've broken it out a little bit to show our fixed costs as a separate line item on this chart. As you can see, we are witnessing a tremendous growth in our fixed costs, particularly our health insurance line items and our pension assessment, as well as our educational assessments. Fixed costs is increasing just over 13%, and education, I am projecting just over a 10% increase, which equals to roughly a $2.5 million increase, or just under 9%. So for the general government and town staff, the average cost of living adjustments for staff is between 2.5%. The select board also approved a policy for performance reviews that provides an additional up to 1.5% for a successful positive performance review. This is the first year that we'll be doing those reviews, and those will be starting in April. We are also witnessing costs just overall related to inflation for supplies and services, so whether that's electricity, oil, just overall cost of buying any supplies and services for the departments. We are witnessing that, and some of the budgets do reflect some of the contractual increases or inflationary increases to those. This budget, as requested, does also include one additional patrolman position and 2 firefighter paramedic positions. The patrolman position was a request from the chief, simply to provide some additional staffing to offset the workload for the detective. Currently, the Detective D'Souza, also serves as a patrol person. It is increasingly challenging to balance the workload of a large or growing community that, whether we have cases of fraud, other criminal activity in the community, is incredibly challenging for Detective D'Souza to also maintain, I think, the attention that's needed for a full police force, but also, when needed, is called on patrol, and that happens more often than not. So the chief requested one additional patrol to assign to the patrol unit and allow for the detective position to be a full-time patrol position. And this would be starting at the step 1 of the CPA. The 2 firefighter paramedic positions are actually related to the recent collective bargaining agreement approved by the select board. You will recall that the firefighters union actually took a 14% pay cut to pay for these positions. Currently, these 2 positions are actually part-time positions, and they kind of fill shifts as needed, which doesn't work out perfectly. It actually is a challenge for the fire department. So these 2 firefighter paramedic positions will create 4 groups of 3 and allow for the reduced 42-hour work week to provide a better balance, and also ability for scheduling for the chief and the deputy to manage the department. So those are just kind of the principal changes, high level. The next slide is just a little bit detailed breakdown of one of the large expense drivers, which is our fixed cost, or we call it undistributed expenses. So pension, you're seeing a 14% increase. Health and dental insurance, over a 30% increase. This is related to 2 things. We are witnessing, one of the quotes we have from our health insurance carrier is a 19% increase. We are also adding 5 enrollees, is that the right word? To health insurance. And the way we budget that was we budget a family plan. So typically we would budget current plus 1. We've received indications that will likely be about 5 additional employees on health insurance.
If I may, just for everybody here, this is across the state and across the country that we're seeing these unprecedented increases for pensions, retirements, and health insurance. And the schools are feeling it, but Connect 351, which used to be MMA last week, the governor and lieutenant governor were talking about even across the state, that this is a huge driver of the increase that they're feeling at the state level as well as we're all feeling, and it's a national issue.
Yep.
So.
As I kind of mentioned in bullet 3, thank you, Madam Chair. Well, all the bullet points. Our pension assessments are continuing to grow for a variety of reasons that I've mentioned here. Inflation is impacting everything, and particularly on our general and property liability insurance. We are budgeting again another 15% increase for a couple reasons. Rutland continues to be a high claim community. We use insurance a lot for a variety of reasons. I think we're doing work to try to manage our risk a little bit there, but also especially the liability insurance is impacted across the entire country. Some of that is related to some of the natural disasters that are occurring across the country, and it's unfortunately impacting us in Rutland. But these are kind of the quotes and estimates that we've received from our insurance carriers. And a lot of this is difficult to manage and control because we need all of this, right? But a significant driver for our 26 budget.
Question,
Yes, sir.
why did Medicare go up 16%?
So Medicare is one of those line items, and the finance committee member in the room knows all too well because we've, I think over the years, gone to the finance committee reserve fund or finance committee in general for transfers. I think Medicare continues to be a line item that we have a hard time budgeting for a variety of reasons. I won't get into a lot of the detail, but every year it seems like we have to go and transfer more money into Medicare. I know and understand the question is, well, it's related to wages, you know how much you're paying people, but I'll just say as an organization that changes every day, one of the challenges that we're having is Medicare, budgeting that in, February? When we're starting the budget in July and have to continue all the way until June 30th. So some of this is related to projected increases from the treasurer collector who gave us these figures, but also we're trying to do a little bit of a better job just getting a handle of where we think wages will be for the next fiscal year. Thus, you're seeing a pretty significant increase. This is already after we increased last year and added $10,000 additional last year. And we're still, I'm sorry to tell you this, Karen, we're still projecting that we're gonna be short.
So let me understand if I can. Medicare pays all the hospital bill, doctor's bills and everything, so this is just the premium cost that the town has to pay.
No, this is the payroll tax.
Yeah.
This is a town share payroll tax.
Which
Is,
is part of Medicare.
no, in municipalities, it's 1.45% of the wages that we have to pay to the federal government for the wages. There's certain exemptions so it's not, you can't take we know what personal services are, but we can't do an exacting of it because there's all kinds of exemptions as to what is part of that 1.45%.
And that's what I'm trying to get at. We are not paying for any of the costs of medical care. That is just the 1.5% that the town is paying for, because the employees pay for their own share. So that's just the town share, the 1.45.
No.
That's increasing at 16%.
So this is employees that are working for the community. We're paying, while we're still working, we have to pay into Medicare so that when we're 65, we can get Medicare.
I get that.
Yeah,
I get that, and that's that 1.45.
yeah, so, and then the 1.45 the employee is paying, so it's the employee has a share on their withholding paycheck and the town has a share. that they're-
Right, so that 1.45, our share has increased 16%.
Because wages are increasing, so the percentage that we have to pay is.
Okay, I understand that. I'm just saying, wow. Wow. Okay, thank you.
That's a good reaction. Not just to Medicare, but to the entire fixed cost budget.
Oh, yeah,
Wow.
yeah. Totally out of control.
Can I just ask one question?
Of course.
What are we claiming for insurance?
What do you mean? For liability?
Yeah, for the general property liability insurance, what are we claiming?
So there's some liability insurance claims that I can't talk about,
Yes, I get that.
as you know. But we also, especially on property liability, we have some challenges. People like to hit municipal vehicles. Municipal vehicles sometimes like to hit other things. We continue to be a high claim community for a variety of reasons. So Maya, our insurance carrier, does offer some risk management programs, which many of the departments are beginning to take advantage of, particularly some of the higher claim, if you will, departments. And our general liability, which is kind of our public official and just kind of covers, I guess, the non-physical aspect, that is also continuing to increase. That I think is the larger portion of the increase, which I think of that 50% is probably about half of that increases through general liability insurance, but.
It would be interesting to see if our claim rate for a small town like this for getting carp damage is greater than Worcester, for example.
We're pretty high. I haven't asked for that breakdown of where we are compared to Worcester, for example, but every time we meet with the reps, they continue to say, you guys are busy. Which is a challenge.
Is there any, and you may have kind of touched on it, but correlation to the fact that we don't spend money to maintain town properties and insurance claims, i.e. the community center issues and?
Yeah, I think some of that is accurate for sure, and especially some of the past claims that we've filed, I think is related to kind of a lack of a maintenance budget and deferred maintenance, but some of this is definitely also human error, right? I mean, but that's also kind of why we all have insurance, to cover some of the things that we maybe can't control, but also some of the things that we can. And I think that's why Maya is continuing to be aggressive in offering some of those risk management programs. They even give us credit when we go to the MMA meeting to attend programs that relate to this kind of work, and actually give us a credit for these bills. So I know Lee and I attended a couple Maya reward sessions at MMA to try to help us out on this end.
Yeah, if I might, I know our pension assessment is, I know why, I know what it is, I know it's high. But what bothers me is we went up 14% in our pension assessment and we're still underfunded to what? We only have about 80% or 70% of our pension, total pension obligation funded,
Less than that, much less than that.
which
Yeah.
is what?
I think it's like,
25-30%.
no, it's a little bit higher, thank God. I wanna
But
say it's in
I was
the
gonna-
forties, right?
Maybe, but.
I think you're thinking OPEB though.
OPEB.
Oh, yeah.
You're
Yeah,
thinking
OPEB is
yeah.
even worse.
Yeah,
The
that's what
OPEB
I'm
is
saying.
worse, But yeah, cause I think Worcester Regional Retirement has a 2030
Yeah,
plan, so
2036, yeah.
so yes, they're saying that we're gonna see relief in the near future.
We're gonna what? Have better rates?
That once they're at the point where they feel they're funded, we're gonna feel it.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
not for tonight, but I definitely think that there's a good policy discussion to happen amongst the board and finance committee for what to do with the pension assessment once we are fully funded, that can help us with our OPEB liability. There's, I think, some examples across the Commonwealth to help us there to also reduce that liability in the long run.
Okay.
As I mentioned earlier, the second largest expense driver is our education budget. This is a breakdown, it's also included in your budget book, but breakdown between Bay Path and Wachusett. One of the largest increases, I think, for both of those is our state calculated minimum local contribution, which is based off of a variety of things. One is the state foundation budget that they set every year, but also Rutland's income as reported to the Department of Revenue continues to grow, and our property values have grown tremendously at just over $1.5 billion for total property value growth in Rutland. One of the key components, especially on the Wachusett budget, is that what they call discretionary has been called operational in the past assessment, which kind of serves as the revenue source to fill the budget gaps for Wachusett. So as their budget continues to grow at a high rate, I think it's no surprise that our discretionary assessment has also continued to grow at a pretty significant rate. Wachusett unfortunately also is especially for the past 2 fiscal years, has been in hold harmless due to their, for a variety of reasons, but pretty much because their decreased enrollment. So they receive what is considered minimum aid. Last year, the minimum aid after the legislature passed their budget was just over $100 per pupil, which I think provided about $800,000, give or take, in state aid for the Wachusett budget. This year, the governor's House 1 budget has that at $75 per pupil. So I think it's about $500,000. Is that correct, Leah?
I think so, yeah.
In new state aid for the school district. What you see, I think, in the governor, you've probably seen in some of these articles, historic investments, Student Opportunity Act. Candidly, that doesn't help Wachusett at all. Because of a variety of reasons, but they look at Wachusett as a regional district, they look at our income, they look at our values, and they look at the needs of some of the other communities that are more rural and have larger problems. And they received a larger portion of that Chapter 78.
If I
Yep.
may, so I believe this past year, there were 221 school districts that were in hold harmless out of I don't know how many. This year it's up to 235. So that number has increased, which is detrimental to all the districts that are in hold harmless. The MMA has picked it up, so they're doing a lot of advocacy to look at the Chapter 70 funding. I believe it's Senator Lewis is I don't think he's yet filed, but will refile legislation to really push the state to look at the Chapter 70 funding outside of the urbans and the super rurals. Because it's across the state that that education is taking, it's not uncommon. We were kind of on the low end of the communities I talked to at MMA this year, where 60% of our budget is education. A lot of them are pushing up 65, 70, 75% of their budget. Another piece that I learned last year through kind of some of it is the regional vocational schools. Their funding formula is different, and so they actually get more money. We pay more money per student for our minimum local contribution for our regional vocational school students than we do our Wachusett students. So while Bay Path doesn't have a discretionary, because they're getting a lot more from us per student. In fact, oftentimes Bay Path ends up having to give back to the communities because they're not spending their mandated percentages, and they have too much in E&D and everything. So it's again a state funding formula piece that is really crippling all 5 Wachusett towns.
It's not good, but again, I come back to a slide we had at a previous meeting where the foundation grant established by the state is growing about 4%, 3.87. But the discretionary is growing at about 20%. So I question why Wachusett can't control the train. Why are they running that? So if we have an increase in our local contribution of $500,000 based on the state foundation, then why do we have, in this case, a 1 point or a, I don't know, 1 point or 1 million point, 1.1 million increase in the discretionary budget? I don't understand.
I just want to emphasize, we've not received final numbers from either school district at this point. So these are my projections based off of a formula for what the district indicated would be their level services plus an additional 1%. So I'm gonna round up and say about 6.5% increase. I then took that number and took an average. So since FY17, Rutland's share of the overall district budget has been just under 13% for conservative purposes. I went to 14%, and that's where I got to just over this $18.1 million projection for Wachusett School District. This is not the final number.
I think it's pretty accurate. I mean, I
just
think you
for-
did a great job there, Ross.
Just for purposes, I just wanted to show what that would look like. It's again about a 10% assessment increase for us.
And I guess from my perspective, I look at it this way. I paid 25 cents for a loaf of bread. Now it's worth $1.50. Am I getting a better loaf of bread? Am I getting a better outcome at Wachusett for what we're paying? They're not telling us. There's no transparency there or anything. And I think that is an issue for a lot of people in this town. We kept paying, what are we getting for our money? Because we know roughly 78% of that increase is going to salaries and benefits. So what are we getting for our money?
I think school committee has had a lot of presentations recently about the needs, and at MMA there was a presentation on the driving cost of education, and a lot of it is that we learned through COVID that we need people to educate, to work with our children to educate them. So like local government, education is a people business. And that those costs have, as we just saw with health insurance and retirement, have gone up.
I'm
The
not
other thing-
arguing
no,
that
no,
we need education
Right.
people. I'm arguing the fact that are we getting a better product for our money?
The other piece I was just gonna say.
And we don't know, we
is-
don't know.
Well, you can go to school committee meetings and they talk about it, but also I think per the regional school district agreement, we have to staff 13 buildings across the whole district. And so because that's how the regional agreement is, that every child must have the opportunity to attend school in their home community. So even if there were some efficiencies, it could be, there's minimum staffing levels for all of the buildings, and if there were some efficiencies, the regional district agreement still is a driver, some of, not all, I hear your,
I'm not accusing or defending.
no,
I am just saying this is a fact. That's all it is. It's numbers. They don't lie. That's all.
Just on, the minimum local is the only number that we actually know. Those were released.
Right.
The state will also continue to try to push Rutland and all the communities in the district towards their proportionate share of what their foundation budget for education. So it continues to increase year over year, especially as some of our demographics continue to change. And Bay Path assessment, we simply put, we added 14 additional students again this year. So projecting a just under $150,000 increase for Bay Path. Both school districts had high school renovation projects. The debt service on those projects continues to increase. I don't believe at either school committee level they've talked about any proposed debt service to be added for this fiscal year. I think they have projects in their capital plans for future years, but nothing projected for this year. Wachusett is in their second year of their transportation contract, which is just over a 5.5% increase. So with that being said, these two increases in our educational line items account for, on the next slide, just about 75% of the projected deficit. So this is a summarized revenue and expense, very summarized, as you can see, town budget and education budget, and some of the detail of our revenues. Projected deficit of just about I'm gonna round up and say $2.4 million. So I think on the town side, I think we've done some work to try to, some of the discussion tonight to try to control some of our costs. We've had some other discussions, I think, with other departments about how can we make things a little bit more efficient. I think we're always open to ideas to control our costs, but still make sure that we're providing a quality service for our residents. I trust that the school committee and school staff are also trying to do the same thing with their respective resources available. With that being said, we, as you can see, continue to be in a problem of our recurring revenues do not match our recurring expenses and projected recurring expenses. So I believe that we have a structural deficit. Some of the definitions here, as I just mentioned, recurring revenue, as you can see on the chart to the right, not matching our recurring expenses. As that gap continues to grow between the two, we come to, I think, where we are now, which is a fiscal cliff where this deficit has the potential to disrupt our financial position, requiring deep cuts or a tax increase. As we all know, Prop 2.5 is a tool passed, I think, in 1980. Were you there?
Yep, I was.
Yeah.
I wasn't. Sorry to say, it was actually, I was born long after that. Which is, as we know, a mechanism to provide for our largest portion of our revenue source, for incremental increases to the tax levy. This is a constraint, I think, and it was intended to be, for a community of homes, a bedroom community, if you will, like Rutland, where we have very little commercial tax revenue. So with taxation being the largest component of our revenue budget, an override is the tool with Prop 2.5 to reset the baseline tax by more than 2.5%, which I think folks in this community are familiar with. So in the budget book, in the next few slides, I think I've presented a couple of different models and scenarios for what potential overrides could look like, and certainly tonight I think could be a discussion. We can go into a lot more detail in future discussions as well, but just wanted to give you an idea of what potential override figures could look like. What you see here is a table that just summarized version of the multi-year financial model, which shows a little bit more detail on our revenues and more condensed version of expenses. So I said we have about a $2.4 million projected deficit. So just to be simple, I said, what if we did a $2.5 million override? What does that do? So you can see in yellow on this table shows a $2.5 million override that increases to our tax levy, and our bottom line position for our surplus for FY26 is just about $126,000. Anyone who's seen our multi-year financial model, it's in the budget book, you know that we have future years of deficits. So I think that slightly reduces our deficit for next year, but we still have one. So while this increases our base tax levy by $2.5 million, we still have issues to address next year and future years. So $2.5 million is a one-year override. One of the concepts that I think we've talked about and I've seen in some other communities is a little bit of a larger override, and the concept of something called an override stabilization, which is a special purpose stabilization fund established and rooted in the general laws that must be adopted at town meeting. So I use the example of a $5 million override to add to the tax levy base. Now we know that our needs this year are only $2.4 million. So what do we do with the balance? There's a proposal here to appropriate, still levy the $5 million, but appropriate in FY26 $2.6 million to an override stabilization fund. The override stabilization fund is intended to use for future year revenues to try to prolong the impact of the override and our revenues and our projected expenses for longer years or for a longer time. We would do the same thing in FY27 based off of our projected deficit. Would appropriate actually we'd have sufficient revenues. We would appropriate $610,000 to the override stabilization fund. We would then tap into the override stabilization fund in FY28 at just over $1 million to solve the projected deficits there. And we would close out, actually not totally, well, we would close out the funds of the override stabilization fund in FY29 at just over $2.1 million, where we would have a still projected $700,000 deficit. So $5 million is essentially about a 3-year override based off of these assumptions. Yes, sir.
And I don't see it there, and maybe that's why you're being conservative. We know that Harmony Homes is gonna come online at some point, and could be as much as $500,000, $800,000 a year in terms of extra revenue. That's not here. Is that because we're saving it for later on, or because you just aren't sure it's gonna come online?
What? That's the answer. I think the agreement that was made with the town had a timeline of about 6.5 years to build 142 units. There is a timeline essentially every 2 years to build essentially a third of those units. We are getting up on maybe almost 2 years now since the first building permit. And it appears that the construction progress is not matching that timeline. The developer does have an ability to extend that timeline at the discretion of the town. Simply put, due to the uncertain nature of that project, I didn't feel it was responsible to include any projected new growth revenues in this budget or future budgets until we actually know that that's gonna happen.
So I'm looking out there and I'm saying, you know, in 2029, we got 707,000 deficit. However, that could be easily solved if this project comes online.
So, and that's something, certainly I think with this model, we will have to repeat this every year, right? In terms of looking at the numbers. One of the things that we can do with construction is, you know, once it receives a certain amount of substantial completion, I think is the figure for assessors, we can then start taxing some of the things. So we're already taxing a little bit of that right now, that's up. But again, it's just still not the, you know, we're nowhere close to, I think, our estimated timeframes for where we are.
Okay.
And candidly, we shouldn't have balanced our budget with new growth.
Right.
We need to be conservative, and certainly I think as we move through the fiscal years, we'll adjust these projections at the discretion of the and recommendation of the assessor's office. But for conservative estimates and budgeting purposes, this is a figure that we feel comfortable with.
And if I may, Austin, this, even in, and I know it would be in the scheme of everything, a trivial dollar amount, but this doesn't include in local receipts any of the High Hawk or the manufacture and grow, any of that, because that hasn't actually been truly realized yet, so all of that would kind of be extra bonus, to your point, Harry. That maybe that 700,000 is gonna be less, hopefully, and as we get more businesses back online and everything, hopefully.
You know,
Absolutely.
I'm looking at that 5 million override and I'm going, all I can hear is the townspeople saying, you know what, that's not gonna last. That's not gonna last. You guys used it all up the last time. So I'm looking at that, I'm going, if we do that kind of an override, we need some kind of guarantee from Wachusett. We're gonna do 8%?
Can we talk about, I agree, can we talk about that once we get through the different models?
Sure, okay.
So just as I mentioned, essentially about a 3-year override, our override stabilization fund in FY 29, we used the remaining balance, and you see the projected deficits for 29 and 30. And I think as the chair mentioned, certainly as some of our figures at the top of the chart, you know, get better and we modify our estimates, we can also modify some of these, especially particularly what we'd be taking from the override stabilization account. We would definitely need to adjust those accordingly as we get closer to those fiscal years. And, you know, cannabis revenue, again, people go buy cars, go visit that establishment. Again, it helps us locally. I don't care what you buy, but if you buy something, it's gonna help us balance our budgets, hopefully.
But the other, if I,
Yep.
all of your projections for revenue do not include any one-time revenue sources, correct? You don't include the $100,000, just again, because oftentimes we do put at least $100,000 of free cash in, but I think I appreciate not having, because I want that level of transparency that if we don't have any one-time revenues, how that goes.
Yep, and as you can see here, no one-time funds, sorry, my cursor is delayed. No one-time funds projected for this year or future years. And I could be wrong, I maybe was looking in the wrong spot. I checked our currently adopted policies, I didn't see anything about using them for a revenue source. All I saw was we need to keep $150,000 in free cash reserve. Certainly if the board wants to modify that policy and include that in a modeling purposes, we could definitely do that, but I just also, again, to your point, wanted to show without any one-time funds, what our financial position looks like with our recurring revenue.
I think we had asked to have that taken out of the financial policies only because we didn't know what the year to year was going to look like with free cash, and so we didn't want it in the policy that it had to be a guaranteed amount.
Yeah.
So to your point, at some point it would be nice to have capital investment and or stabilization or whatever, so.
The next is an area, well, I feel everyone when I talk about this number, but the next, just for modeling purposes, is projected $7 million override. You'll also notice that I added one additional column, one more fiscal year, FY 2031.
Yep.
And that's because with a $7 million override, obviously it's the same situation FY 26, we don't need $7 million. But we appropriate just about $4.6 million to the stabilization fund, and for the next 3 years, we appropriate 2.7 and 1.1 in FY 28. We don't need to tap into the override stabilization fund until FY 29 at just about $650,000. And we begin to utilize the override stabilization through FY 31. That FY 31, the stabilization fund balance is just over $1 million still in that stabilization fund after using the 4.6 for a projected revenue source. So this kind of gives you an idea of some of the different scenarios with different override figures. Certainly if there's different numbers that we want to talk about, I don't know if I can do it on the fly, but I can certainly prepare that for Select Board Finance Committee for discussion purposes. But just for a couple of different examples, I wanted to show this for you guys and see how long we could potentially make different override figures last based off of our assumptions.
There's no debt in there, right? No future debt. There's no building a new school. There's nothing of that in there. It's just, we don't pass any bonds for the next year so we can use the $7 million.
Correct. This is just debt that we have on the books. And something like that would likely be an excluded debt service, which you would then see reflected on the excluded debt line item. So a dedicated revenue source for that debt service. Still obviously to the tax levy, so there's an impact there, but not projecting anything because in my opinion, it would be foolish to project something that's not approved by the voters yet.
I mean, I look at that and I go, yes, there could be a black swan event we don't even know about.
Yep.
Okay?
Yep.
And that just destroys everything we've done here.
Yep. Yep.
I think that's what the town needs to be aware of if they're looking at this.
So I think some of the questions that I think we're all gonna get is, you know, how's this gonna impact me? So using our estimated tax impact calculator, I've taken from assessed values of $150,000 to just over $1 million. Believe it or not, we do have a couple of those, well actually more than a couple, we have several parcels at over $1 million, is actually kind of surprising. But this kind of shows for each of the override figures what the impact would be in your new estimated tax bill would be for your respective tier. Our average single family assessed home value is about $450,000. I meant to put that in yellow, but that is the average value, so that would be kind of the impact to the average single family home. And the numbers that are italicized, I'll try to do it with my cursor, that is the additional dollars added to our tax rate. So we go from just about $14 to $15.59 and so forth as you go through the tiers. Certainly, some of these figures are pretty large depending on your home value. Certainly there's an impact to anyone regardless, but I just wanted to show what each of these potential overrides would have for an impact on you based off of our current tax rate.
And this is just 1 year. In other words, we borrow $7 million. It's only, I mean, we raise it, it's only, we're not, that isn't a permanent tax increase going forward.
Correct, right, yeah, so that adds, it resets your tax bill as well. Obviously, subject to assessment change up or down, right?
Right.
So your tax bill is reflected there. This was my late night on Sunday. I wanted to dig into the data and see, well, how many of our homes are within some of these tiers that I have here? So I took some data from the assessor's office for all of the homes. I took out some of our exempt property. These are just taxable properties. This is the breakdown, the number of homes that we have in Rutland at each of those tiers. So 150,000 or less, 150 to 300, 300 to 500, 507, $700,000 or higher. So you can see that 80% of residents are less than $500,000. So with the scenarios that I mentioned earlier, if we did a $2.5 million override, the impact would be $795,000 or less for an override that would last 1 year. For $5 million, it's $1,500 or less for an override that would last 3 years. So you think maybe about $500 a year, estimated, right? For a $7 million override, about $2,200 or less, that would last 6 years. So what is that, just under $400 per year? But again, it lasts 6 years. I thought that was kind of interesting. Maybe not. I put a lot of work into that.
No, I think it's interesting. I would, to take it one step further, I'd like to know what the income are on those categories.
Yep.
You know, I mean, we're averaging, our income level now, according to this, is 150,000 average.
Yeah, median.
Well, so
That's the
where
median.
does that apply?
Yeah.
You know, for somebody, maybe 150 grand a year, you can afford 2,200 extra a year,
Yep.
type of thing. So that would be interesting.
So I was just gonna say, I'm just thinking from a resident's perspective, it might be helpful to add in that it's not 2220 for 1 year, that it's broken down over those years so that the annual impact is not actually $2,200.
Yeah, so the first year, there would be that impact, but they wouldn't see 2,200 again additional next year, right? So if
Right,
you
yeah,
understand-
I don't know if people would
Yeah.
understand
But if they think
that.
about it that way, and I can, that's some great feedback, I can try to find ways to phrase that. Again, this was some late night work. I was bored and thought it would be interesting.
I mean,
Just being
if
honest.
41% of the people are earning in that $150,000 category.
Yeah.
Then that's different from the 2%.
Yep.
Okay, in
It's-
terms of what's being asked of the individuals
If I may
to
though,
buy.
$150,000 salary doesn't get you much these days. With, especially with the cost of childcare and everything else, and we're talking about
Yeah.
property, it's not much. It's
So-
not much of a salary.
So if somebody's making 100,000, that's even worse then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
It sounds like a big number, but when we're talking about putting that into, with what we pay in taxes already, and then again, all of our fixed costs, like you said, health insurance, daycare, everything else, groceries, which are, you know, everything is gonna go through the roof.
If I
It just-
might
it doesn't go
ask
far.
you, if you wanna say, I'm in a different category than you guys, so you're raising families today. If 150 is the norm here, and that's really not making a lot of money, what is it that somebody could afford these extra taxes? What would you have to be earning to make it so your family can still live?
I would say 150, it depends a lot on what your family situation is. Because if you have no new cars and you have older kids, or I think it really depends where you are. I don't have an answer because I think everybody has different level of expenses and a different level of comfort that they're accustomed to living.
So you're saying somebody earning 150, I'm paraphrasing now, I'm not putting words in your mouth. Somebody making 150 a year could easily afford the extra $2,200 in taxes.
I never said that.
I see, that's what I'm trying to get at in terms of if we're gonna go in front of the town here. To me, we need more statistics, more in-depth, so we can understand what we're expressing to them.
But
And
I
who
think-
fits that
But I
category.
think to Leah's point, if you've got two families, for example, there where your income's 150,000, one could have two full-time, one could have no expenses, no new cars, no daycare because there's a stay-at-home parent, and the other one doesn't and has to pay for all those expenses. So the level of income to expenses, you're never gonna find that data. They're not gonna be equal.
Different families' comfort level with debt,
Right.
all that kind of stuff.
Well, and just comfort level and wanting experiences, right? Some people are, you know,
So I have one question. I know our budget this year is based on level funding. Is that what all of these future years are, based upon the level funding of this year?
No.
How much did you go up?
It varies depending on the line item, so for example, on our insurance, I've estimated higher, because they projected higher. The average increase is 4 to 4.5% per year.
Thank you.
Any more discussion on that? So the next few slides, I wanted to look into the data in where Rutland compares to communities across the Commonwealth. In the next few slides, you also get a little bit more into detail for locally. This first chart just shows our average single-family tax bill and the tax bill as a percent of the income per capita. Based upon this first chart is communities in Massachusetts with populations between 8,500 and 10,500 with budgets less than $30 million. So our average single-family tax bill for FY25 is $6,400. We're right about the middle of the pack compared to communities, as I mentioned, with that criteria mentioned above. So, you know, half are higher, half are lower. And as you can see, we're about 14%, the tax bill is about 14% of the per capita income for Rutland residents. And you can ask, yes, sir?
No, I said interesting.
So the next chart, people say, I don't care about Cape Cod or other counties, I care about Worcester County. So where do we compare to communities in Worcester County with populations less than 10,500? I didn't want to modify the budget here because Worcester County has lower budgets. So I wanted to show more towns. There's a lot more towns here, as you can see. We're still about the middle of the pack at $6,400. As you can see in blue, where we are, that's Rutland. The communities in green are the other Wachusett District communities. We're still the lowest average single-family tax bill in the Wachusett School District. Even with the override, even with the assessment increases, still on average, the lowest average tax bill. Which I thought was interesting. And the last one are communities a little bit more granular. The same communities, but instead, are they members of school districts? So we're just above middle of the pack here. But again, obviously still the lowest in the district, just one below Sterling, Paxton, and Princeton. And then Bolton, because Bolton is Bolton, they're still high. But that's where we compare based on our average tax bill to communities with the criteria mentioned in the title here. I just thought it was interesting as we talk about average tax bills and how do we compare to what you may consider our peers based on criteria. You can get really granular with some of this. You can also, you can dive in a little bit deeper on budget. You can go on population. You can go on income as well.
I was gonna even say even
Yep.
just services, because I think if you go back a couple slides, you had Harvard on, and I don't think Harvard has a full-time professional fire department. I think they're part-time, so I think that they were on the far left there, but their service, I think that there's a lot, to your point, could be a lot more granular as far as the level of services that these different communities have,
Yep.
as well.
And unfortunately, DOR doesn't allow us to do that.
Great.
The only thing that we can really dive down on is, are they members of regional school districts, which I thought was interesting to put here. But this is kind of benchmarking right against what you may or may not consider comparable communities. Any questions on what I've mentioned thus far? Need a break or anything? Everyone's good? All right, so when we met last, the board asked, based off of our projected deficit at the time of just about 2.1 million, the board asked me to go to 10 departments to reduce our FY26 budget request by just over $2 million. We have done that. Last week was terrible. I just want to be honest. Terrible for employee morale. Terrible for, I think, just overall the consideration of what the impact is for these reductions of $2 million is to town departments. The directive to town departments was based off of their proportionate share of the town budget, not the overall 30 million, but just about the 10 million. So their proportionate share of that town budget, they were asked to propose reductions based off of their proportionate share of the deficit. So you can see significant impacts to all town departments we'll go into detail over the next few slides about what these reductions mean, but we did it. We proposed $2 million, still adds about a $500,000 increase to our total expense budget. But this is a significant reduction in services for all town departments for the community. I'll quickly roll through some of this, but on the general government side, town administrator and select board office, the proposal is to reduce the office hours to 30 hours per week. That includes the 2 staff positions, myself and Tamika, reduced to 30 hours per week. Reduction, the town administrator and select board budget kind of ends up being, Tamika pays a lot of the bills for other town departments as well. So we are reducing most, if not all, of our supplies and services budgets. The only thing that we are not reducing significantly is the legal budget, because we still use that. And I anticipate even with reductions, we'll still use it. We also entered into a recent lease agreement for new photocopiers. We would return that lease photocopier. Town clerk, reduction of the assistant town clerk's position to 20 hours a week. You'll recall we just increased that at the special town meeting in November to match the building hours of town hall, or reducing that back to 20 hours per week. Reducing the wages for town election workers. We'll have less town election staff below the state requirements. Candidly, I don't know what the impact of that is based off of the Secretary of State's office. Certainly next week we can talk about that at the joint meeting. You'll see a consistent theme across all these budgets. We are slashing our supplies and services budgets for everything, which the FY24 budget with the override restored a lot of those budgets for all town departments. We're going back to way pre-override here. Treasurer collector, reduction in hours for the assistant town clerk, and 100% reduction in hours for the finance clerk position. Candidly, this isn't much of an assistant or a treasurer collector's office. Treasurer collector will be 40 hours a week, but there's less time on some of the important responsibilities of the treasurer collector. He'll be at the front counter doing the collecting work. We will be less aggressive on our tax title work by reducing our tax title expenses. This does have an impact on the community and our revenue position as well. Accounting, the cut required, we are cutting the expenses for the legally required annual audit. Candidly, we'll figure out how to pay for it, but we couldn't sustain any other cuts to that budget. The assessor's office, again, staff reduction of the administrative assessor. We will not be going out on inspections. This will have an impact on our future revenue growth because we're not able to capture that value. And no additional tax revenue for the community in future years, or limited tax revenue. That'll be a one-person office again. Planning and Community Development Office, reduced similar to the Select Board and TA office, reduced to 30 hours per week. You'll see probably a common theme with the annex. The building will be closed probably for, well, technically closed Friday, but people still work. And we'll probably close one more day out of the week and do longer hours to fill those. Inspectional services, pretty significant impact there. We are reducing all the inspectors' hours, less time for inspections and timely inspections on permits, which will have an impact on our revenue, but also our accountability and safety for homeowners and the general public. We do not have any funding for any alternate inspectors, so when inspectors are out, we don't have any staff coverage. Again, no funding for purchase services and supplies. Inspectors will be asked, they don't have to, but to provide their own materials, which some of them already do as a courtesy. Health, no general fund for the health clerical wages. We also can't support our required landfill monitoring services. We will no longer provide the Stericycle shrubs disposal at, I think it's at the public safety building. And significant reduction in hours for our communicable disease monitoring and our nursing clinic coordinator services. On the library, the assistant director and the children's librarian will both see reduced hours. We will not have any library aides. The 3 staff that are in the budget, even with the reduced hours, will be the only staff available for the library. completely eliminating the supplies budget and a reduction in our books and materials budget. I think it's other charges line item. Based off this is actually a required formula. We will be below that formula, and we will need to request Board of Library Commissioners waiver to maintain certification. If we're not certified, that has an impact also on state funding, our state grant. Council on Aging, we do not have the funds for the outreach coordinator position. Outreach will shift to the director, adding to, as was mentioned tonight, already a busy workload. We'll be doing fewer programs for the seniors, just due to no purchase services or supplies. And veteran services, reduction in salary, but also a reduction in our allocation for general fund supported veterans benefits. This will have future impacts on our state aid as well. For public safety, as you can see, is the largest reductions in this budget. 3 part-time and 2 full-time officers laid off, animal control officer laid off, and significant reduction in supplies and services. Again, pre-2024 budget, pre-2023 budget levels. The budget book that I gave you also has a narrative from the police department that gives a little bit more detail here.
Austin, I have a question.
Yep.
Because, sorry to interrupt, because animal control is regional and part of the regional agreement I thought was adding an additional part-time officer, could that impact the regional agreement with the other communities
So,
further impact, like negatively impact?
great question. It will definitely impact our revenue because we also receive revenue associated with this position. But it will also place a significant stress on the full-time animal control officer. The workload for the communities right now is a lot. If she doesn't have her part-time assistant, I wouldn't be surprised if we'll have to take a look at those regional agreements. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. I just, as an, yes.
Fire department, 4 full-time positions laid off. We'll only have enough staffing for 1 ambulance in service. Right now we have 3. Reduction overtime wages, with limited overtime. We at times will probably have no staffing for ambulance. Reductions in funds for maintenance. Some of our fire fleet is getting older. We do a lot of maintenance, especially on that ladder truck right now and some of our engines and ambulances. Due to lack of funds, trucks will candidly just be taken out of service if we don't have any funds to repair them. And we will have no funding for any OSHA or NFPA training or particularly the replacement of life safety equipment. We have an annual replacement program of, for example, our turnout gear. We won't have any funding to replace that. Public Works, reduction of staff time for highway and facilities needs. We're gonna do a lot less with less staff. We will not have any funds for our contracted services for highway, facilities, forestry. We get a lot of calls, I think, for especially forestry related work. We won't have the staff to do that. We won't have any resources to contract that out. We just won't get to it. We won't be able to get to it, unfortunately. One of the things that I think you noticed with the override budget is our fields and our town common especially has looked amazing. And I give a lot of credit to the Public Works Department. They've done a really good job taking care of our fields and mowing and mulching and everything else. We will have no resources to do that work, definitely not to repair the equipment. Harry, as you know, is chair of CIPC, some of that equipment is pretty old. If that comes into disrepair, we won't be able to repair it and you'll see a significant reduction in the quality of the fields and our common areas that we have across the community. Also an interesting statistic, we lose about 2 inches per year of road due to dust. That's why several times a year you'll actually see crews at different times of the year doing work on replacing gravel roads, essentially filling and regrading. We will do that less, we may not do it at all, so you'll see a significant degradation in the gravel road conditions across the community. And as we talked about purchase services, some of the largest expenses in our facilities budget for DPW is electricity and fuel expenses. Due to limited funds, we may need to reduce the hours or close some of the buildings, just to reduce some of those expenses. So that's a lot. Here's just an overall, again, same slide, review of the projected reduced expenses. They're significant. I really don't wanna minimize that, and I regret that we had to talk to the town departments about this. It has not impacted staff positively, and I feel terrible. I recognize that this is a challenge that we have, but I am concerned about staff now. And especially if this is the budget, I'm concerned about the level of services provided to the community, and how whatever staff is remaining will be able to provide those services that I think they do a really good job preparing them, so. Before I move on, is there any comments or questions on this budget? Yep.
Taking our fixed costs out of it, we have double-digit negative numbers everywhere except for education. And even if for somehow we manage to get a 2.5 override at $2.5 million, I don't see anything more than that even being considered by town people. We have to cut another $2 million next year, so we're right back where we started. Has this been provided to the school committee?
Not yet, no. I just gave them to you two tonight.
Because I would like them to see what their budget is doing to this town. I don't understand how, and I'm not saying that the kids don't need these resources, that they don't need the teachers and whatever programs that they're recommending as part of that. The school committee that's their job. They're there to look out for the kids. I understand that. But the fact that, to me, I see no willingness to even come to the table to say, like, why do we have to cut? Why do we have to decimate town services, and yet the school can continue to hire staff and add more programs? Where are they shoring up their budget so that we don't have this? That's what is very frustrating to me. And I feel like year after year, this town has just said, it's the school budget, we have to accept it. And I don't think we have the ability to just flat out say, yep, there's nothing we can do about it. We need to be pushing back. And again, I'm not saying they don't need it, that they don't deserve it, but this is not sustainable for this town. And for me, sitting up here, the school committee is there to watch out for the schools. I was up here elected to watch out for the town. And I don't see the school coming to bat. I looked at the presentation, I didn't go to the meeting, their budget retreat that they had. There was a slide right in there where they had right on it, one of their considerations was impact to towns. But in any of the following slides, I saw nothing to indicate whatsoever that they took that into consideration. And again, I wasn't there, I don't have minutes, so, maybe there was. But I don't understand how we can just blindly accept year after year, 10% increase. And like you said, even a small percentage on a big number is still a big number. How we can just continue to and not push back. And if it takes the town saying no to get the attention of the state to adjust their formula for state funding, is that what we have to do? Because we can't do this. We can't.
I agree. I think, with all due respect, the ball is in your court now to talk to your fellow elected officials at the school committee level. I have monthly meetings with the superintendent. We have another meeting tomorrow. with the finance and select board chairs and town administration, I'm sure that this will come up. We know that Paxton is in, I think, a similar position. I think some of the other towns are close depending on the school budget and some other figures, so I think more people, whether at the elected official level or the voter level, should provide feedback to the school committee. I can only tell you what it costs to run the town. I can't go into detail about what it costs to run a school district, so I think that probably a lot of people agree with your sentiment, but I think it's important for this board to demonstrate that and relay that to your peers at the school committee level. And if you need backup, if you need information, that's why I'm here, be happy to give it to you, but this is where we are, and as I've been asking for several months now, you know, I am asking, at this point, we're getting to the point where we need to make some decisions, and we have some other considerations to talk about with future slides, but what do you wanna do? And how do you wanna do it? And I think we'll do anything to try to make that happen and make it successful.
Let me ask Gus, is there a way that you've looked into that, yes, we may have to do a 2.5 override, but it doesn't have to be for 2.3 million? Is there any way we can maintain some sensibility in the town that doesn't destroy it? Because looks like Wachusett is like an oligarchy. They don't care about us, they don't pay attention to us, they do their own thing, 20% a year increase, let's love it, yeah, great.
Yep.
But we have to deal with this, like Jen said, we sat here on the board and we gotta maintain some kind of sense to the town. So is there a way, my initial thought was, God love, I'd love the education to come to the table and say, we got this problem. We're gonna take 1/3 of our citizens and we're gonna tax them. We're gonna ask them to increase. We're gonna take 1/3 of our town and ask them to suffer a little in cutting some stuff. But then we're gonna ask education to say, you guys gotta do the same thing. Make it around, everybody's gotta feel the pain. And right now, Wachusett's not feeling the pain.
Yeah.
So is there another way we can look at this without going, you know, Titanic destruction here?
So, couple of questions and a couple of answers there. So, as you know, that this budget does not include, because I didn't feel it was appropriate without policy direction, this budget does not include any use of free cash or, for example, stabilization funds. We have about I'm gonna round up, it's not quite there for the accountants in the room. About $1 million in free cash and about 1.3-ish in stabilization.
Yep, sorry, don't worry.
It's all right. So, you know, there's about, you know, $2 million in one-time funds there that you could potentially use at your discretion for a level of what you feel would be appropriate potentially for an FY26 budget. I just wanna warn you, that money's not coming back as a one-time funding source.
Right.
And when you look at the model for future years, there is a question about how responsible is it to fund ongoing obligations with a significant amount of one-time funds for this year, especially when we see a demonstrated deficit in future years. I just wanna put that out there. I think in terms of dealing with whether it's the school district or some of the other towns to sort of band together, I think that's something that could potentially help us. I don't know if it's too late for this year, maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but a little bit more financial planning, I think, with your neighbors, especially we all are about, the school is about 60% of all of our budgets. So when it increases significantly as an impact, as you know, on our bottom line. So some of the things that I've seen in some other communities is, and maybe not to this level, 5 towns it's a big district, it's the largest regional school district in the Commonwealth. Some sort of a agreed upon revenue sharing model or policy between the towns and the school district. So for example, if the towns collectively can only afford, I'm gonna come up with a random number, $4 million additional in local aid per year, that's a mutually agreed upon level of funding or percentage is a better number, right? That is then related to the school district and that's their revenue budget that they have, right? That's something that I've seen in my previous community, we did that. I've seen in some other communities that have, I think, a pretty good close relationship with their school districts. It's something that doesn't exist here, so, maybe that's a project that all of us can work on, especially at the policy level, with your fellow elected officials. But just, Harry, at the top of my mind, those are a couple of ideas. I'm sure we could creatively think about some other things as well, but certainly I think some work to do on the financial planning aspect. I do have general confidence that I think in our projections for our town expenses, again, I went kind of line by line for each of their town budget expenses. I feel pretty comfortable. I also don't have a crystal ball, just wanna put it out there. I may be wrong. But the largest thing that is always uncertain, especially here, is what will 60% of our budget be? And that is really hard to predict when we don't have a lot of information until really late in the game.
And again, I come back to, we are slashing staff. We are letting people go. We are dropping some good stuff for them. And Wachusett isn't touching one person. That is almost criminal.
In fact,
in
they
my
wanna
opinion.
add,
Huh?
they wanna add.
That is almost criminal from a school district, the way it would treat its towns.
And just thinking like towards the future, we continue to we put ourselves in this situation with these types of cuts. Who's gonna wanna come work for this town? If every year their job is at risk, they're gonna wanna go someplace that has a little bit more stability. We have a hard enough time finding staff as it is, qualified staff.
Yep.
I like my job because I have job security. I would feel very uncomfortable going to a place where I have the potential to not have a job within a couple of months or a year.
You know,
It happened in sorry, Harry, it happened in FY '24, we lost a couple of good people.
Yeah.
And I do believe it's because of the uncertainty of what the town budget would support.
Yep.
You're totally spot on, Jen.
And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that I'm 100% opposed to an override, but it has to be reasonable. Like I could vouch for, go to the town and say, listen, these are fixed costs, inflation, I understand. We need an additional 500,000, 600,000 for town
That was the town.
operations.
Yeah.
But if the school is not willing to come to the table and negotiate, what do you really need? What can you do without? Again, everybody's constrained, so why do they continue to get everything that they want and ask for at the complete decimation of this town? Cause if that override doesn't pass and we cut this $2 million, like I said, next year we have another 2 million to cut. We're not gonna have anything. There will be absolutely nothing, so what do we do then?
You know, I don't want us to lose track that the state has put us in this confrontation. The state cut 3 million out of our Wachusett. The state's revenue has grown to a point about 40%, and our contribution to us has gone down. It's up to the state to not let the towns fight. And I'm not seeing that. And that really, for a democratic state, if you will, to allow that to happen is unconscionable. Absolutely. Those representatives down in Boston who are allowing this to happen, it's unconscionable. I don't know how they can live with themselves.
Well, and
To do
it's,
that.
and it's not like we haven't been advocating to the state, the school district has been. But obviously it's falling on deaf ears, so does it take some more substantial pushback?
Maybe it takes kicking some of those out and replacing them. That's all I can say.
I'm talking about locally here, does it take pushing back on the school committee, the school budget? To say you can't keep doing this, this is not sustainable for the town.
But your comment about what their function is right. Their function is not for the town. Absolutely not. Their function is to hire the superintendent, to run the budget, and to hire staff at the superintendent's approval. That's the three things they're responsible for, making sure that the education works. They weren't elected to take care of this town. Maybe that needs to change too, when we start electing school committee people to be more responsive to the town. I mean, there's a lot of things that can happen, but the school definitely right now, they don't care.
I just have a hard time saying, yes, let's go for any override that would give the school the funding that they're asking for. Cause it's just, that's all we're doing, is we're funding the school without any negotiation.
Right.
So, but I appreciate that. I'm gonna leave that to you guys then. Whatever you guys decide from a policy directive, I'll certainly carry that forward to staff and to the superintendent and his colleagues, but and I'll certainly assist with any advocacy that you need, whether it's at the state or at the school committee level, but elected should talk to electeds. And
Isn't
I'm
that,
asking-
didn't that happen a couple of weeks ago? The school committee came and we kind of told them,
yeah, I
have we
mean,
heard
one
any
select board member
response?
from each community. I think it means more when you have a collective.
Yeah.
But that's not, we did have one. The school committee came, the select board was there.
But it's
not to
our
the committee as a whole, right?
It's our 3 reps versus a school committee of 6, I don't remember the number off the top of my head.
There's 3 votes on a committee of however many, yeah.
Are you suggesting maybe we get or talk to other select board members in other towns and kind of work with them?
You could do that, you could send a letter, you could attend their school committee meetings and provide public comment, or do they allow for public comment?
Yeah,
Or testimony, you could reach out to more than just your Rutland reps. I mean, if you wanna change their budget, I suspect you do it earlier rather than later to advocate for that change. I believe.
so they haven't voted on it officially, they had their budget retreat right last week, and then there's another roundtable to kind of get feedback from, I will say, it seems like at least definitely 2 other communities are most likely going for an override. A third community, and not including Rutland, a third community was kind of like, if 2 are going, then we might as well go. I think the 4th was also kind of on the fence about it also, just in a sense of at least one of those would be a large, similar to what Austin presented with the kind of 7 years or $7 million 6-year override, like a larger corrective override. So I think there was some not consensus, but conversation about if we're gonna do this, then we need to do it now. And what's the buy-in on the school side, because we need to make sure that it's, to everybody's point, that it's not an override that then is taken by a lot, and similar to our costs. I don't know, Austin, I think we had talked about, I don't know if you had gotten just what the fixed costs on the school side would be, if like essentially what their level funded budget would be, kind of. Because obviously they're presenting, I think the most recent's about a 5% increase, but that's to their total bottom line budget, and then because of the way the funding formula works for the regional schools, that pushes ours to 10% or whatever, so
Yeah, they I was waiting for you to talk for a couple more seconds.
sorry.
Their benefits and insurance line item is also increasing pretty significantly. It's just over 10%, 10.22%.
One of the things I wasn't sure of is, what is the contribution percentage at Wachusett for the health benefits?
So Harry, we discussed this earlier,
Yeah, but
briefly, as we were talking, I was looking it up. I believe it's 78%.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I thought it was a little bit higher, but I think
Contribution.
it's,
It's slightly higher than ours. And then I think for retirees, I think they're 50, I wanna say they're 50-50 for retiree health insurance, but they're slightly higher than ours on health insurance, but they do have, I think, challenges on health insurance. They have what's called the Public Employee Committee, which makes it challenging, I think. So we have a insurance advisory committee made up of employees that provide a recommendation to you, select board. It's very different for a public employee committee. They essentially vote, and I think the teachers or the employees have a majority share of that vote in committee. So they get essentially the insurance that they want, and that's mandated that I think the district has to follow that. I think the district is, trying to find ways to make that arrangement a little bit more district friendly, but also still provide quality insurance for employees, but they are kind of restricted on their plan design changes and benefits offerings. But then also, I think what was mentioned at the most recent meeting with the district for their budget retreat, their insurance also went up, just like ours, right? So
And they were a low claims,
Yeah.
they're a low claim group, but even for healthcare, and they saw their health insurance provider had significant increases that hit them also, even though they didn't have the claims to substantiate the huge increase.
Yeah.
But I think the budget hasn't been voted on at school committee yet, and I think I just got a notice that they had scheduled a special meeting if the budget is not voted on or whatever at their next regular school committee meeting. I forget when it is, next week maybe?
I can't remember, yeah.
So I think the feedback tomorrow night, and when we had the other roundtable, I went in and Alex and I said, and Austin said, like, CPA failed in the fall. Like, as much as we as a community need this from the town perspective as well as the education side, it's not going to be an easy sell by any means at all, no matter what that dollar amount is. And so then the question is, if all 4 other communities pass the school budget and we fail it, or only one community fails it, then it still passes and we're on the hook. And that's, I think, to the point where the two making the cuts on the municipal side was just.
Yeah, I don't, if the school committee comes back and says, okay, we're gonna reduce our budget, it's only gonna go up 9.7%. I mean, that's 1.8 million, what's 1% off of that? That's not gonna have an impact.
Yeah.
So they have to.
So I did the math, Harry, so the district would need to cut over $21 million from their district budget to get us to essentially a reasonable level.
7% or something maybe?
Even less, I think, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, 21 million.
Okay. And what's their budget? 120,
Yeah, 100.
7,
Their
20.
proposed budget is almost 130,
130 million.
so. Anything else on?
So to
Yeah.
cut their budget would be way less than what we have to cut our budget percentage-wise. Okay,
If I could, these are really hard conversations and decisions to make. But I think that maybe it would be, I know we're saying, the school committee has that they're only for the school, but they live in Rutland, they're elected officials from Rutland. And maybe a real strong conversation on what it will affect the town would be helpful, it's seeing this and having a one-on-one with them. Because they're from Rutland, this is their community as much as it's their school department. I don't think it's gonna come up with a $21 million, but I think we need to start there.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can talk to our 3 school committee members and I think at the budget retreat, I think Sherry and Matt at least spoke about the town side in Rutland a little bit and just what that looks like. And the other communities, Paxton went through it last year, right? Like there's still, so it's, again, we can speak to our three representatives for sure and try to rally them around, but ultimately,
Oh, I don't know that
It's-
it's the
Right.
answer, I'm just, but
right,
we have to start with them.
Right.
It was my thinking.
yeah, well, and I mean, Austin and I think Alex will go tomorrow and we'll have, we'll show some of this to the entire, it's not the entire school committee, it's the administration, and, this is what it could do. And, cause that was some of the conversation with the joint meeting also with FinCom and our school committee reps also, was if we're going for an override, we need as much buy-in on the school side as we do, if not more, on the school side. Cause the other piece is, and I personally don't like the model of continuing to pit the schools versus the towns, but do we do an education override and then as a to fund the education piece, and if it passes, then it passes. But again, I think that sets us back to continuing to pit, and we did that in the past, and then we had to do the cuts and cuts and cuts because it didn't pass, but the budget passed or whatever. So I think that we need to kind of change some of that piece of thinking, but also to everyone's point here, it's not an
But, I agree with you on that, but I think it comes back to transparency. The town has to know that we're willing to do things, but Wachusett isn't. It has to be made clear. That's transparency. If they don't wanna disclose it, if they don't wanna tell us how they put the budget together or where the line items are, that's their decision, I guess. But when it comes to this town and we say, we need $2.1 million, they have no idea why. And I think we need to make it pretty clear that for Rutland, all we need is $500,000. But for Wachusett, we need 1.6 million.
And let the school explain.
And
Where
then
that money
let the
is
town make their own mind. Let them make it up. But at least be transparent with them. We've got a lot of good people in this town, 10,000, and they can make their decision if we allow them to see the numbers and be transparent. I don't know, did we answer your thing tonight, what you're looking for?
I don't know.
I don't know if three of us wanna make that decision,
So why don't we talk about something different?
Okay.
Annual town meeting. So I think, especially with a lot of this, one of the considerations that I think we've discussed internally, and also I think it was briefly brought up at the joint board and FinCom meeting, is possibly postponing the town meeting date. So as you know, town meeting is set by our bylaw. The Saturday preceding the second Monday in May, which is the election, so the tentative town meeting date is Saturday, May 10th. We talked with legal counsel and we wanted to see if the general laws allow for the select board to delay town meeting. We were given chapter 39, section 9, which speaks to town meeting. It is town council's opinion that the board can, as long as the meetings, the warrant isn't posted, you do have the authority to delay it. So the only thing we can't delay is the town election bylaw. There is nothing in general that provides for that. So that is still scheduled for May 12th. Why? There's a variety of reasons, just a couple of bullet points here. For example, a 1 month delay would provide the select board and FinCom and also eventually our town meeting voters additional time to provide any information related to the public. Just gives us more time to be transparent with the public about pending budget proposals, whether it's override, cuts, whatever it is. Based in general, the only mechanism for an override to be successful is actually the passage of a ballot vote. If the ballot vote is not successful at the town election, we do not have the authority to increase the levy, thus town meeting does not have the authority to appropriate anything beyond what the levy allows for. So this will allow us additional time to make some of these policy considerations that you've briefly mentioned tonight, whether it's more free cash, stabilization, being creative, buys us a little bit more time to present to town meeting, the legislative body, and have an approved budget prior to the legally required June 30th deadline. Towns do not have the privilege, like school districts, to pass a 1/12 budget. We were discussing this a little bit earlier, what happens if you don't have something by June 30th? I don't know. You can't pay any bills because you don't have a budget. Can you work? Do you have to close? I don't know, but we won't get there. But this is just one consideration. Board doesn't have to decide this tonight, but I just want to share that with you as we're beginning talking about the budget process. That is an option that's available for you to exercise if necessary, so. I just wanna thank you for the discussion. This is my email, it's my phone number. If you have any questions, and this is more for the public, about this budget, any of the budgets, please reach out to me. The budget book is available online. Again, these slides are available online for more detail. And I look forward to working with all of you through the next few months. So, thank you.
Thank you, Austin, Donna, and all of staff, because I know it's been not pleasant, and I am saddened that we're already at this point where we were a few years ago of looking at, and I would argue that these are probably even more decimating cuts than what we were looking at previously.
Can I say one more thing?
Yeah.
This was a little bit new, I kinda like it. The only thing we have to do, this quite literally is the definition of a hot seat. The heat is blowing right on me.
I can't feel anything over here.
No, I know, I am
Freezing.
sweating. You can see why I'm sipping my water, I wasn't nervous, I'm hot. So, thanks, Tamika.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Thank you. So I know we're 3 members tonight for sure. I will, Austin, I think Alex and I will go tomorrow to the Wachusett Roundtable and provide a lot of this feedback. But if there's anything, explicit that you want, reach out to Austin to make sure it's communicated, and he and I will carry that.
So, can I ask one question? Next week, well, the 13th, whenever, is that next week? We are presenting to the joint body of the Select Board and Finance Committee. What are we presenting? And I respect that you don't wanna make decisions without a full body, but
Well, and I think if
you are the Select Board right now.
Well, and
And
I
I think we need some direction as well for town departments about what we will be discussing jointly next week.
right, and I think
And we've already published this to the public, so,
previously, I think at our last joint meeting, that I think it was just 3 of us with FinCom. Also, I think FinCom and the 3 of us were of the, we need an override perspective. It seems like more of FinCom was looking at a multi-year, hating to look at year after year after year, every year saying, we need $500,000 this year, we need $500,000 next year, we need whatever. And if we're gonna do it that way, that we needed buy-in from the schools as well. But that was a few meetings ago, and so I personally don't see how we can go and say we are doing these cuts to town, to the level of services that I think our residents are accustomed to the work that our employees do. I don't wanna undervalue the work that they do, that you all do.
and for the other member, I just wanna be clear, I am going to ask the departments to submit what they've requested and is in the town administrator's recommended budget. I want them to speak to that. They will also be prepared to speak in further detail about some of the reductions as well. And maybe it wasn't for me to ask that question in terms of, if you're going for an override, what number, but I also I think for transparency purposes for staff and the public, I would appreciate some sort of idea of what you're truly leaning towards, and I recognize that that may change for a variety of factors, but I also wanna make sure that FinCom, that's why, Karen, I sent it earlier to you guys. I was hoping for a thank you, or yes, you did, but I am trying to be transparent about where we are. And recognizing some of the feedback from Finance Committee,
The
about
new
we.
bylaw takes the responsibility of the budget from the finance committee and puts it into the select board's hands.
Right, and with all due respect, Finance Committee is still responsible for recommendations to town meeting.
I agree.
So I wanna make sure-
But the budget has to come from the selectmen.
Yeah.
To the finance committee.
Which is why we're meeting next week, right?
But
So,
that's the thing, it's now, the new bylaw, that's now in the hands of the three up there tonight.
I wanna stress that there's still an importance of the Finance Committee as a part of this process. So, just because the bylaw changed, it's important for you guys to be a part of
I'm
this.
not saying it's not,
So-
however, the bylaw specifically says the selectmen are responsible for a budget.
I appreciate that.
My feeling is, and again, it's just my observation, we can't expect the whole town to absorb the bill. We can't expect the town employees and that to absorb the whole bill. And we can't expect our funds to absorb the whole bill. So I'd like to see a third, and a third kind of split, how we can work that out. Maybe a 25 and a 37 split type of thing. But every piece has to absorb something. We can't get away without it, to me. Because I don't think in this town, after what we just went through, we might get a 2.5 through, maybe. But we're not gonna get 5 and we're not gonna get 7. So that'll blow up in our faces.
And again, that only gets us through 1 year.
I know, but for me, the people I talk to, it's like, okay, we'll take care of this year and we'll worry about next year. Because at least now I know what I'm dealing with this year. I don't know any other future year.
And to your point, Harry, I kind of agree with that because again, if we can come together and all work on making cuts across the board, that's a little bit more palatable. But it makes me very nervous that we don't know, especially with the larger numbers for an override. We're asking for that. Who's to say that Wachusett's not gonna come in with a 15% increase and all that money is now gonna go to that 15% increase instead of to town operations for that fiscal year?
My concern exactly.
So
I can't trust them.
I don't like the fact that we have to consider an override without having those discussions with the schools
That's
on.
more certain numbers
Yes.
for such a large percentage of the budget.
Yes.
What I would like to see, and again, that's just me. What I would like to see is if we're gonna go for 5 or 7 million, we need a commitment from the school that this is going to be our maximum increase.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah.
In writing, signed by everybody, tested to by oath.
Will not exceed.
So we know what we're dealing with. If we're asking our townspeople to trust us, that we won't spend that too soon.
Well, and I think this is some of the difficulty with the regional school is they had said essentially, I think they were proposing, right, level services plus 1% for the next 3 years. But as we just saw with insurance and everything, level services can fluctuate a full percentage or more, and then that decimates our percentage because of the funding formula. So I hear what you guys are saying as far as, as much as I hate going to town year after year, every 2 years and saying we need more, we're going then with more hard numbers, more
Yes.
concrete numbers.
This is where it needs to go to.
That we can show the true accountability piece.
Right, no guarantee, but, and it shouldn't be the average of the last 5 years. It should be, if we're going to ask our town people to spend an extra $2,000 this year, we wanna see some maybe 8% growth, not 10. So that if we're gonna feel the pain, I'm sorry, you guys gotta feel the pain. You gotta accept some responsibility for the pain. And I'm not seeing that right now, cause we haven't seen the budget, so I don't know. That would be in contract, so to speak, saying, here, this is what we're gonna, and if we violate it, then what's the punishment? If they violate that?
Right, I was gonna say then, yeah.
Okay.
So we'll have some good conversation tomorrow night. Yeah, like I said, I think given the economic uncertainty coming up in the next year or two, also it is easier maybe to look at a 1 year number or and hope that it might go longer than 1 year, right? But we don't, right? We advertise it as a year and then but then we can see where we are, reevaluate. Okay. Thank you, Austin, and thank you, Donna, and everybody, all of staff, because Tamika, I'm sure you guys have been battling and fielding a whole lot of calls and everything, so
Well, like they say, we get the big money, we get to make the big decisions.
But also, and Austin, I know I've mentioned this to you, outside of just this budget discussion, I think it's still a good idea for us to take a look internally at things that we can consolidate, changes that we can make, that maybe it's not gonna have a giant impact on the budget, but cost saving measures, more efficient things that we can do. I mean, honestly, every little penny helps, like in this situation, so.
and I think continuing the advocacy at the state level for
Yes.
for all the fund, and not only on the school side, but also on the
Yes.
local side as well, so. Okay, thank you. Believe we're through old business. Moving into new business, we have the 2025, no, it's the 2024 Moses Howe Award, so it'll be presented in 2025, but it's for the calendar year of 2024. So January through December 2024. So we will, I don't think we need to take any official action, we will just, well, I guess we can move to open the nominations.
Is the board comfortable just placing a start and end date on the nominations? I had proposed opening tonight and keeping it open till February 21st, which would give the residents a couple of weeks, and then it would give you guys a week to review the nominations and then announce the winner at your first meeting in March 3rd.
It's up to the board, I'm fine with that, I just wasn't sure because February 21st, I believe, is school vacation week also. If we wanted to extend it through, but I think, I think on something like this, the people that wanna make the nominations do it fairly quickly, and so
So do we need a motion to open the discussion or just?
No, I think it would just be more guidance for our office to know
Okay.
what you were comfortable with.
Okay.
I'm fine with what you've proposed.
yeah. So,
Dates are okay.
thank you, Tamika, and I think we have the summary of the kind of what it is and everything also. Thank you. We have the fiscal year 24 annual town report. We need to put out a call for nominations for dedication and the in memoriam pages. And I think, Tamika, you're proposing a similar date for that opening period. This, because it's fiscal year though, it would be July 1st of 2023 through June 30th of 2024.
Correct.
So we have to, our brains have to work a little bit differently.
Yeah, and that information will be specified on the form.
Okay.
For example, with the Moses Howe Award, it specifies that it's for excellence in public service that took place during the 2024 calendar year. Whereas with the town report, it's going to direct residents that the person must have passed away between, like they said, July 1, 2023 through June 30th, 2024.
I know, and think, was it just last year, we had received a couple that had passed away in the calendar year, but not the fiscal year, and so just.
Correct, and I know sadly we've had some recent passings, and so I wanted to make sure that we included on the form, just so people will know we'll have to hang on to those till next year.
I appreciate that, thank you. Is the board comfortable with the same date timeline? Again, I think as long as we, the people that are interested are gonna do it right away, and.
Yeah. Good with that.
Thank you. Then, we have our special town meeting on, this Thursday, and there was some back and forth, I believe, planning board has opened their public hearing, but they have not yet closed it. So John and, Austin and Tamika have had some back and forth with legal. I believe that was included in our packet. Austin, I don't know if you wanna speak just as the legal kind of summary of everything.
Yeah, no, I think just the general question is given the fact that the planning board has not yet closed their hearing and still open, I think they have a meeting scheduled for just before town meeting on Thursday. Is it 6:30, 6 o'clock?
Yeah.
Unsure about what the board will do with that public hearing. I think we just wanted to be clear about what that means we can do for the special town meeting on Thursday, and moving forward with this particular article or any potential, or this particular bylaw or any potential changes to the bylaw, so it's about, obviously, I think it's very clear that if the planning board does not close their hearing just before town meeting, we're in the same situation that we were at the special town meeting in November, so just wanted to share this information with the board for your information and discussion and consideration in advance of Thursday, so.
And we had asked, I think, if there was a way that we could postpone or
Yeah.
delay the
So-
special.
Yeah, so if planning board still doesn't close, quote unquote, close their public hearing for Thursday, there could be a motion on the floor to adjourn the town meeting to a date certain, essentially a future town meeting date. You need to have that date in the motion. So if it was the annual town meeting date, we're also discussing about changing that, right? You would adjourn to Saturday, May 10th at 6 p.m. for the annual town meeting. That could happen before you take up the business of the article, but given a lot of the factors, that may not be something feasible to, depending on what the board's pleasure is for the annual town meeting date. Or if you have another special town meeting scheduled, but.
I think,
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Are we also meeting before?
6:30, I believe,
6:30?
right? Usually,
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah, I
usually we
posted
post
for
before,
6:30.
we, select board and FinCom had already made the recommendation on the article, in lieu of planning board having done their public hearing, because planning board had a favorable recommendation at the fall, and so I think select board and FinCom, the conversation at that meeting, Tamika, correct me if I'm wrong, was kind of that it's what's kind of in the best interest in town from a kind of financial zoning perspective, and because it's not physical zoning, it's just increasing the opportunity for the number of licenses. FinCom and select board were comfortable that that could potentially provide a positive economic benefit to town, so they were in favor of it. I think a lot of the conversation at planning board on last Tuesday was about the process. They still aren't happy with the process, about the article, that it was the same article, although they were included in all of that conversation. It was a joint meeting and they had voted to move forward with that article as well. So I think that that's some of the conversation there.
So it all comes down to the planning board.
Yep.
Okay.
So if anybody, if Jen or Harry, if you guys have any other like questions that you would like Austin or John to kind of reach out to legal to try to answer in advance of Thursday night. I think Roger will be there Thursday night also. So if we have any like last minute questions as well, we will have that as an option as well. thank you, Austin and John and Tamika for all the back and forth with everything. We have for a future agenda request item, I believe the historical commission, it's the commission coming in on the 18th, Peter. Is it worth inviting also the society, because I think the society was also interested, or is this in lieu of the society, do you know, Jen or Tamika or Austin?
The historical commission has been working with the historical society, so it's my understanding that they would also have attempt to have representation
Okay, so
at the meeting.
Tamika, can you just please make sure to invite the society as well? Thank you. Is there any other future agenda requests? Obviously, budget's going to be a big conversation. We have the joint meeting on February 13th with FinCom. And like I said, our February 6th, this Thursday is our special town meeting. Then the February 13th is a joint meeting with FinCom. Then our regular schedule is Tuesday, February 18th, because it's the Monday holiday, President's Day, and then we're into March, I believe. So if anybody currently has any other agenda requests, by all means, and if not, send them through the office to Tamika and Austin, please, and myself. Anything else? Austin, Tamika, you guys have what you need? Thank you.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.